A scene depicts a man gasping for breath, glancing around in a tense atmosphere while people sneer at him cynically. A nobleman allows him to attack with magic. The unfortunate man seems powerless, yet he persists in conjuring magic with his hands. The magic that emerges is only small flames that have no effect when they touch the nobleman's clothes. The nobleman remarks that the most important things for a wizard are lineage, talent, and effort. He also states that by effort, he means only for those with superiority. So no matter how hard one tries, if they're just commoners born from ordinary lineage, they'll never master magic. The nobleman then unleashes a massive fire spell and attacks the unfortunate man with it. In an instant, the unfortunate man is engulfed in flames, yet he feels joy and amazement at the magic hitting him. Despite feeling the heat, he sees that the nobleman's magic is incredibly beautiful and astonishing. He hopes to learn more about magic and perfect it. The scene shifts to a place where the unfortunate person from earlier opens his eyes and sees several maids welcoming him with joyous laughter. He perceives the maids as enormous, like giants, and startled, he wants to attack them with his magic. But as he moves and looks at his hands, he sees that they are tiny. He feels puzzled, yet unintentionally from his small hands, he unleashes a massive fire spell that pierces through the roof of a palace. The scene shifts again to the city, where a small man is distributing flyers containing news that the seventh prince of the Saloum Kingdom, named Lloyd, has been born. Back at the palace, it turns out the unfortunate man has been reborn as a tiny baby in a royal family. In the royal palace, two maids are searching for the whereabouts of the prince, Lloyd. Prince Lloyd, now a child, immediately emerges from his hiding place when he sees that the coast is clear. However, he encounters two men from the kingdom. Lloyd informs the two men not to reveal his whereabouts to the maids. The two men understand Lloyd's words, but when they look back, they realize Lloyd has already fled far from them. One of them remarks that Lloyd's behavior is understandable since he is the seventh prince and is far younger than his siblings, so he won't participate in the struggle for the throne. But the other man disagrees, knowing that Lloyd could understand language from a young age and read magic books instead of picture books. He also believes that Lloyd is the reincarnation of William Bolt, a legendary wizard. As he ran, Lloyd overheard the conversation and confirmed that he was indeed someone reincarnated, even though he was previously just a commoner in the Saloum Kingdom. The maids were still searching for him, so he hid, pondering how he still retained memories from before his reincarnation. He remained the same as before, only caring about the magic in the palace that made his heart race. Stealthily, he entered the massive royal library, vastly different from any library he had visited before. While reaching for a book to read, a maid named Silpha caught him. She immediately invited Lloyd to practice swordplay with her. Lloyd felt sword practice was unimportant to him, being only the seventh prince and unrelated to the throne. Silpha replied that sword practice was crucial for a noble. She had dedicated herself to training Lloyd for the past 3 years. Lloyd thought if he didn't show progress, Silpha would continue training him late into the night. So he continued the sword fight with Silpha. The fight seemed evenly matched, but Lloyd was cheating by using magic to mimic Silpha's moves. He did it to end the match quickly so he could return to reading. However, due to differences in reach, strength, and body posture, even though he could mimic Silpha's moves, he would inevitably lose. Thus, Lloyd cheated further by using growth magic to elongate his sword, body-strengthening magic to reinforce his hands, and levitation magic to hover. Silpha was somewhat surprised when she blocked Lloyd's attack, but they continued the match. Lloyd dispelled his mimicry magic, then attacked Silpha with different moves. Lloyd was confident he would win this time and quickly return to reading. But he was wrong. His attack was blocked by Silpha. Silpha also revealed she knew Lloyd had cheated. Lloyd was shocked, and immediately, Silpha counterattacked, defeating Lloyd. But instead of anger, Silpha was impressed by Lloyd's effort to fight seriously, despite covering up his shortcomings against her. Silpha was greatly impressed when she learned that Lloyd was using 2 types of magic simultaneously, growth magic and levitation magic. Deep down, Lloyd felt relieved that Silpha didn't realize he was actually using 4 types of magic at once. The scene then shifts to a hot spring where the maids are bathing together. Surprisingly, they invite Lloyd to bathe with them. He rebels and wants to bathe alone, but Silpha insists. If he's allowed to escape, Lloyd would run off to read books. Seeing Lloyd's continued defiance, The other maids frighten him, saying that if he remains a naughty child, he'll be devoured by the demon of the Forbidden Library. They recount the tale of an ancient demon named Grimoire who once brought the Saloum Kingdom to the brink of destruction and was sealed in the kingdom's forbidden library at the cost of many wizards' lives. Silpha adds that the book is sealed in the underground forbidden library of the palace. The other maids confirm this information. They glance at Lloyd, who appears silent, assuming he's frightened by the story. They then debate who should sleep with Lloyd tonight, so he won't be scared alone. Seizing the opportunity, Lloyd manages to escape, unexpectedly feeling very interested and eager to visit the Forbidden Library. Using magic to remain unseen, Lloyd bypasses two male guards. Upon entering deeper, Lloyd realizes there's a final seal placed on the library door, set by 10 wizards. However, Lloyd easily breaks the seal. Upon entering the vast library room, Lloyd feels elated and amazed. As he reaches for a book to read, suddenly a book flies, and a creature emerges from it. The creature is still bound within the book and introduces itself to Lloyd as Grimoire. Grimoire asks Lloyd to release the seal binding him. Grimoire persuades Lloyd, promising him gold as much as he desires. Lloyd takes the gold offered by Grimoire, but he easily discerns that it's merely a stone manipulated by magic. Grimoire looks annoyed, but then offers something else. He promises to teach Lloyd ancient magic lost hundreds of years ago. Unexpectedly, Lloyd is very intrigued and decides to release Grimoire's seal. Grimoire feels amazed and happy that Lloyd freed him from the seal. Lloyd demands Grimoire to fulfill his promise. Grimoire keeps his word and conjures a spell called Black Laser Cannon from his fingertip. When the spell hits Lloyd, there's a black light and a massive explosion. Grimoire assumes Lloyd must have perished from the attack. But unexpectedly, there's a magical shield created by Lloyd to protect himself. Lloyd also feels very interested in the uniqueness and composition of Grimoire's magic. Lloyd asks Grimoire to attack him again. Angry, Grimoire launches a barrage of spells at Lloyd. However, his attack still can't penetrate Lloyd's magical shield. Watching the attacks, Lloyd feels even more excited, wanting to experience the effects of the magic attacks on his body. Slowly, Lloyd extends his index finger out of the magical shield and deliberately touches Grimoire's magic. The magic injures his finger, but Lloyd becomes even more fascinated to observe the process and effects of the magic damage on his index finger. Grimoire grew even angrier, causing his head to split, giving him the appearance of having two heads. From these two heads, he simultaneously chanted magical incantations. Seeing this, Lloyd was highly intrigued, as it's impossible to chant two incantations at once. This technique can only be done by demons with two mouths. Grimoire could chant two magical incantations and activate them as one stronger spell. Despite attacking with his strongest magic, Grimoire still couldn't penetrate Lloyd's magical shield. He felt puzzled. Feeling desperate, Grimoire decided to flee, but Lloyd had already erected a large shield spell, blocking his escape. Grimoire, enraged, attempted to attack again, but Lloyd stopped him, stating that he was tired of Grimoire's magic. Now, Lloyd wanted to see Grimoire's defensive magic. He unleashed a massive magical attack at Grimoire, rendering him helpless and defeated. After defeating Grimoire, Lloyd restored the messy library room to its original state. Grimoire still couldn't believe Lloyd's power. Lloyd also felt impressed by Grimoire, as he learned that demons couldn't die from magic, even after enduring a powerful magical attack. Grimoire admitted defeat and said he would submit to Lloyd and beg to become his familiar. Upon hearing this, Lloyd agreed immediately. Grimoire had a feeling that Lloyd would only use him as a guinea pig. Lloyd asked Grimoire to change his body into a smaller form because his current form was too conspicuous. Grimoire successfully transformed into a cute little creature. Grimoire intended to deceive Lloyd with his adorable body and then possess Lloyd's body through his spirit. Lloyd allowed Grimoire to enter his row so he wouldn't be visible, which Grimoire saw as his golden opportunity. As Grimoire attached to Lloyd's body, he felt the extraordinary magical power within Lloyd. He surrendered, realizing he couldn't infiltrate Lloyd, who possessed such immense magical power. Grimoire decided to comply for now and seek another opportunity later. Grimoire suggested Lloyd call him Grim instead. Lloyd felt relieved and decided to read books in the library to his heart's content. Episode 2 starts with the display of a royal prince with golden hair seen preparing himself for something. The prince walks into a room where Lloyd is present, immersed in reading a book of magic. Lloyd greets him cheerfully, addressing him as Albert. As it turns out, Albert wants to invite Lloyd to practice magic together. In the arena, several targets are set for magical aiming. Albert demonstrates his fire magic prowess, casting flames from his fingertips and hitting the targets precisely. Everyone present is impressed by Albert's ability, including Lloyd. Grimm, nestled in Lloyd's lap, knows that Albert is the second prince of the Saloum Kingdom, skilled in both literature and martial arts. There's a rumor circulating that he will be the next king. Albert has the privilege to use facilities in the palace, and sometimes he invites Lloyd to practice, as he did today. Lloyd sees it as a golden opportunity since such chances to cast magic in the palace are rare. Albert encourages Lloyd to cast his magic in the provided arena. Lloyd advances, uninterested in the throne, as his desire is to learn and perfect magic. He intentionally redirects the trajectory of his fireball magic, hitting the edge of the target. Everyone applauds Lloyd for his action. One man there underestimates him for only hitting the edges of the targets. Lloyd pays no attention to him, instead focusing on analyzing his previous attacks. It seems only Albert recognizes Lloyd's talent. He lets Lloyd use the training arena while he takes a short break. Now, Lloyd is alone there, accompanied only by Grimm. Lloyd is very happy because there are many things he wants to do in the training arena. He even wants to try using the dual incantation technique once performed by Grimm. Grimm thinks it's impossible for a human to do. Without much thought, Lloyd extends his hand to Grimm, and Grimm is sucked into Lloyd's body. Grimm is surprised because he didn't expect Lloyd to merge with a demon like himself. Now Lloyd has Grimm's mouth and eyes on the palm of his hand. Lloyd asks Grimm to chant the Fireball Spirit Mantra. Grimm agrees. They chant the magic mantra simultaneously. However, Grimm is shocked and stops chanting because he feels something unusual. He feels surrounded by a tremendous amount of magic power and mantras. Grimm asks Lloyd for an explanation. Lloyd answers that what he just did was reciting a scroll of mantras, a technique to shorten the chanting time. By combining various types of mantras, he can shorten the chanting time until the magic rises. Just now, Lloyd chanted hundreds of mantras at once. Grimm is very surprised to hear that because until now, he has only been able to chant 2 or 3 mantras at once. Lloyd is disappointed and says it will only make him run out of time. Lloyd tried another approach. He concentrated and then attempted it. It turns out he could also speak through Grimm's mouth on his hand. Now, he could speak through any mouth he liked. Grimm couldn't do anything. He worried Lloyd would recite 2 high-level magic mantras. Indeed, that's what Lloyd did. He even recited 2 different magic mantras and techniques. He merged the 2 magic techniques. Grimm was both amazed and frightened because Lloyd possessed extraordinary magic techniques and power. The magic was too extreme. Grimm felt he couldn't just shoot it into the ground, as it would surely cause tremendous destruction. Eventually, the magic technique was shot into the sky. The extraordinary flashes of magic were even visible to the people in the city. The scene shifts to a room where Albert is seen lounging surrounded by several men and maids. One of the men asked why Albert seemed so attentive to Lloyd. Although he appeared quite skilled in magic techniques, he was still a child, after all. Albert immediately responded that the people around him didn't have sharp vision. Albert then explained that the fireball shot by Lloyd hit all the targets in the same pattern. It seemed Lloyd did it intentionally. According to Albert, that was something extraordinary. Albert also believed that someday Lloyd would surely become an important part of the kingdom he would lead. But in truth, Albert was humble, and he just wanted to be closer to his brother. One of the men among them looked out the window and thought that evening was approaching because the sky looked so dark. On the other hand, Grimm looked very shocked and frightened because the magic power released by Lloyd into the sky had torn a hole in it and darkened the sky. When he opened his eyes, Lloyd was also very surprised and hoped the sky would return to normal. Fortunately, the sky returned to its previous state shortly after. The next day, Grimm read a newspaper with a headline about the torn sky. Is it due to abnormal weather or a sign of disaster? Grimm showed the newspaper to Lloyd, who was also surprised to hear the news. When looking at another page of the newspaper, Lloyd found a news article about an adventurer group who had conquered a dungeon and obtained treasure in the form of gold and silver, as well as items containing magical power. Lloyd became very interested and decided to go conquer a dungeon too. But Grimm stopped him because it would surely cause a commotion if people found out Lloyd had left the palace for a long time. Lloyd didn't run out of ideas. He then used his magic to create a clone of himself. The clone looked very similar to the original Lloyd. It could even move just like the real one. However, the main issue was with the maid named Silpha. She would surely easily recognize that it was a cloned creature. Lloyd remembered some time ago when Silpha knew that Lloyd had grown by 0.7 centimeters just by looking at him. Grimm felt both scared and amazed when hearing the story, but it seemed Lloyd had a brilliant idea. Not long after, Lloyd was seen flying away from the palace. What actually happened was Lloyd inserted Grimm's spirit into the clone, and Grimm's body entered Lloyd's palm. They could still communicate with each other. The Lloyd clone looked very perfect. Grimm had evil intentions with the clone, but Lloyd, who was seeking a dungeon, said he was grateful to have a familiar like Grimm and entrusted everything to Grimm, who remained in the palace. Hearing this, Grimm was touched and abandoned his evil intentions. Lloyd, floating in the air, tried to locate a dungeon with his sight, but he couldn't find it. When looking down, Lloyd saw a woman being chased by a group of monsters. But unexpectedly, the woman turned around and attacked the monsters chasing her, defeating them all. Grimm, seeing this, guessed that the woman was a martial artist. Lloyd was also very impressed by the breathing technique performed by the woman. Lloyd then recounted that he had read in a book that in a certain land, there was a technique that used Kai energy. The technique utilized breathing circulated throughout the body to produce tremendous strength. Although they were quite far apart, the woman actually noticed Lloyd's presence. She asked Lloyd, but Lloyd didn't respond. Actually, Lloyd really wanted to meet the woman, but Grimm reminded him that with his current appearance, the woman would know that she had encountered the seventh prince of the Saloon Kingdom. Because there was no response from Lloyd, the woman assumed that Lloyd was an enemy, so she ran swiftly towards where Lloyd was hiding. Of course, Lloyd felt panicked, but luckily, when the woman reached where Lloyd was hiding, Lloyd had successfully used transformation magic and claimed to be a novice adventurer named Robert. Seeing the handsome Robert, the woman shyly introduced herself. Her name was Tao, a level B adventurer and a martial artist. Tao was very impressed by Lloyd's handsomeness. She felt very happy because after training for 18 years in the dojo, Tao, who had become an adventurer, actually longed for a romantic story. However, men only like delicate women like nuns, so it was difficult for her to find her ideal man. With firm determination, she intended to make Robert her boyfriend. Lloyd expressed that he actually wanted to explore the dungeon together. Of course, with enthusiasm, Tao immediately agreed. Finally, they arrived inside the dungeon. With her strength, Tao defeated the monsters in front of her. She wanted to show off her charm to Robert, but Robert was busy collecting shiny stones into his bag and ignored Tao. Tao revealed that she had been adventuring alone all this time because she hadn't found a good travel companion. Along the way, they lit a campfire and cooked food. Robert asked Tao about the Kai technique she had used earlier. Tao explained that Kai technique training began and ended with breathing, circulating breath throughout the body, resulting in tremendous overflowing strength. Tao also explained that it took long breathing exercises just to feel the Ki power. Unbeknownst to Tao, Robert had actually been practicing Kai breathing all along. Tao was surprised, and she also reminded that if not accustomed to the technique, there would be a burning sensation in the lungs. Robert, who had tried the technique, could feel that there was magical power and other energy within his body. He felt he could unlock and channel that power, turning it into a magical technique. Seeing Robert's keen interest in Kai, Tao decided to tell Robert more about Kai. Back at the palace, Grimm, who was currently inside Lloyd's clone body, felt amazed because Lloyd was not interested at all in his comfortable life as a prince. He was only interested in learning magic techniques. While Grimm was enjoying delicious cake, Silpha greeted him. Of course, Grimm was very surprised and afraid to see Silpha right in front of him. Back in the dungeon, Tao was seen teaching Robert about Kai techniques that he could use to defeat monsters. It turns out, the monster that Tao had just defeated was the dungeon boss, Grey Wolf. With the defeat of the dungeon boss, there was a treasure chest with an unlocked key. They approached the treasure chest. Robert was very curious about the contents of the chest. From his breath, Tao knew that Robert was already accustomed to Kai techniques. Robert could master it in a short time. Of course, Tao felt very happy to find someone talented. She had been dreaming of a romantic story between teacher and student. After examining the treasure chest carefully, Robert invited Tao to open it together. But as soon as it opened slightly, the chest released something dangerous, some kind of magic that could cleave through whatever it passed. From beneath the treasure chest emerged a terrifying creature, a skull-shaped being wearing a robe. Tao looked shocked and frightened. She understood that the monster before her now was a lich. In episode 3, Tao and Robert were seen locking eyes with Lich. Tao, who actually felt very scared, tried to muster up his courage and pretended as if he wasn't afraid to face Lich in front of Robert. Tao also stepped forward, intending to confront Lich alone, and ordered Robert to leave the dungeon. Of course, Robert refused, saying he wanted to see Tao fight. Quickly, Tao moved towards Robert, and with both of his hands, he hurled Robert far towards the dungeon entrance. Tao was forced to do it, even though it might cause some of Robert's bones to break, but it would be better than him dying. Lich then began to attack Tao with his magical powers. Tao could only dodge Lich's attacks. In his heart, Tao was still puzzled why a Lich could appear in such a low-level dungeon. Even adventurers with level A were struggling to face it. Tao intended to at least buy some time so that Robert could get out of there. On the other side of the dungeon, Robert, still casually tossed due to Tao's earlier throw, but actually, he still wanted to ask Tao about Ki and the dungeon. Robert then summoned his magical shield to stop the throw. After stopping, Robert felt confused why Tao drove him away. He was still wondering whether he should return to Tao or just go home. Robert wanted to ask Grimm's opinion, but when called, Grimm didn't respond. Looking at Grimm in his palm, he looked listless and seemed to have passed out. With his eyes still closed, Grimm asked for help for Robert to go back to the palace immediately. Of course, that made Robert worried. Inside the dungeon, Tao was fighting against Lich. She looked battered, feeling like she didn't stand a chance to win. Tao thought that Robert could already escape, so she decided to retreat too. As she tried to withdraw slowly, suddenly Lich said that the move used by Tao was Kijutsu. Lich also explained that the technique originated from another country, and he had eaten people who used Kijutsu before. Of course, Tao was surprised to see Lich communicating. Lich also explained that he had been devouring the souls of adventurers since ancient times, and he had their knowledge in magic techniques. Lich said again that actually Tao was not worthy of being eaten by him, but he wanted to eat Robert instead, whom he thought had extraordinary abilities. Hearing that, Tao was angry because she felt underestimated, and she abandoned his intention to escape. In anger, Tao then attacked Lich with her Kijutsu technique. Lich protected himself by forming a magical shield. Tao didn't falter, she kept attacking. She said that she had been practicing Kijutsu every day, even when she was only 5 years old. Tao, in her rage, continued to blindly attack Lich, until finally, her attack managed to penetrate Lich's magical shield. Tao used his Kijutsu excessively, so now she felt very exhausted. Tao could no longer move, not even able to move a finger. Unexpectedly, Lich was still alive and now stood behind Tao. He said that his magic technique was far superior to Tao's, which was why Tao lost. Now, Lich launched his magic attacks towards the defenseless Tao, intending to finish her off. Fortunately, Robert was by Tao's side, shielding her with his magical shield. Now, Robert wanted to defeat Lich. Lich reacted by chanting a spell to attack Robert. At that moment, Robert emerged from his shield and swiftly leaped behind Lich. Lich was astonished, puzzled how Robert could move so fast. Lich didn't even notice Robert chanting the spell for his fast movement magic. Robert attempted to use Kijutsu, taking a deep breath. Seeing the opportunity, Lich immediately attacked him with his magic, but Robert activated his barrier again to deflect the attack. Lich blindly attacked him with his magic, but Robert's barrier magic was much stronger than Lich had thought. Inside his shield, Robert continued to refine his Kijutsu. He regulated his breathing, using Kijutsu to accelerate the chanting of his magic spells. Robert kept breathing, drawing air into his lungs. Robert felt that his shield was hindering his Kijutsu breathing technique, so he opened it. Lich thought that Robert's shield was destroyed because of his attacks, feeling pleased, and resumed attacking Robert, who was not using his protective shield. Robert avoided those attacks while continuing to regulate his breathing for his Kijutsu technique. Robert wanted to combine Kijutsu with his magical power. Robert succeeded. He could create a magic ball in his hand, a combination of Kinjutsu energy and magical strength. With this technique, he could easily deflect Lich's magical attacks. Robert then unleashed a spinning magical disc, thinner, utilizing his new technique. With its thinner form, its attack range extended further. Robert relentlessly launched his new technique's attacks towards Lich. Laboriously, Lich tried to counter these attacks with his magic as well. Lich was still impressed because Robert could unleash his attacks rapidly without chanting spells at all. Lich thought it wasn't magic but kinjutsu. Robert's attacks finally grazed Lich's face a little, but it wasn't fatal. Now, Robert prepared an even more powerful attack until he felt his new technique was perfect. Robert then unleashed his attack towards Lich. Lich anticipated the attack by forming a shield, but it wasn't enough to stop it. Robert's attack successfully split both the shield and Lich's body in two. Lich was defeated. With a wide grin, Robert told Tao that he had done it. With sparkling eyes, Tao looked at Robert with joy and admiration. Robert and Tao then headed towards the treasure chest in the dungeon. When they opened it, it turned out the contents were not as expected. Inside the chest, there was only an old knife. However, Robert believed that there must be magic power within it. Robert decided to keep it anyway. After that, the chest closed by itself and sank into the ground. Tao explained that it would happen like that when the contents of the chest were taken. The dungeon would then disappear. Robert thought of it like a lizard dropping its tail, letting its tail be taken while it escaped. Robert also thought that the core of the dungeon was actually the chest itself. That's what Robert thought, so he decided to pull and take the chest. Tao was already panicking and kept urging Robert to run away because the dungeon was starting to collapse. Fortunately, both of them managed to survive, and when they reached outside, the dungeon closed and sank into the ground. Tao now knew that Robert was a wizard, and she acknowledged that Robert had extraordinary abilities. Tao asked why, in the final moments, Robert chose to fight only with kinjutsu, not with magic techniques. Tao, somewhat embarrassed, thought that Robert did it on purpose for her, who had been belittled by Lich. But Robert replied that he did it just because it looked fun. Tao was disappointed, but she had suspected Robert would answer like that. While they were chatting happily, Robert suddenly remembered that he had to hurry home. As Robert began to prepare to fly, Tao told him that his final attack was a secret kinjutsu technique called Ki Blade, a technique that even Tao couldn't do until now. Tao told Robert that she would train even harder until she became a cool woman. Hearing that, Robert became even more enthusiastic. He loved everything about it and wanted to keep growing and developing together. Robert then soared into the air, heading home to the palace. After Robert left, Tao said to herself that she would continue to strive to become a woman worthy of Robert. But then, Tao realized that she didn't have any contact information to reach Robert. Robert flew quickly to reach the palace, transforming himself back into his original form, Lloyd. Upon arriving at the palace, Lloyd immediately checked his room and asked about Grimm's condition. Grimm was seen lying on the floor of his room, bruised and battered. He complained about Silpha, who had beaten him badly earlier. Grimm felt very depressed because even though he was actually a demon, he seemed powerless against a maid named Silpha. A while later, Grimm saw the knife brought by Lloyd, and he was very upset because Lloyd was willing to be late coming home just to fetch such a lousy knife. Lloyd apologized to Grimm, and he also believed that the knife was a valuable treasure. Lloyd experimented with the knife. He soaked it in hot water, scrubbed it with a small iron, and finally, there was a layer that peeled off from there. It was mana essence, a catalyst used for enchantment magic, allowing one to inscribe spells on weapons to strengthen them. Grimm became enthusiastic. He knew that if they had that item, it meant they could learn enchantment magic. Lloyd replied that it wouldn't be as easy as that. Lloyd then put it into a reaction tube, and he obtained mana essence used for the knife. Mana essence was very difficult to obtain, and enchantment spells were also very difficult to perform. If the experiment failed, everything would be wasted. Therefore, Lloyd analyzed the mana essence with his magic to separate all the basic elements from the liquid. The spell succeeded, and it turned out that the basic elements were oil, silver, and hematite. Seeing those elements, Grimm saw that hematite was very difficult to obtain and also very rare because it came from shattered demon stones. Fortunately, Lloyd had rocks from the dungeon, which they might be able to use. The rest, oil and silver, as well as plenty of weapons. They looked very excited to collect those materials. Lloyd approached his father to ask for silver. His father gladly gave Lloyd a lot of silver. His father thought that Lloyd was a very humble child because he only asked for silver, not gold. He also wondered what Lloyd would buy with all that silver. Lloyd took the silver to a room, and then he and Grimm melted it with magical fire. Later that evening, Lloyd had a sword fight with Silpha to get oil. Lloyd tried to attack Silpha with his magic. He used earth magic to create a large mound, but Silpha managed to dodge the attack. When Lloyd jumped to attack Silpha, she vanished. Lloyd was confused. He landed right on top of the mound of earth he had created, and it turned out Silpha was hiding beneath the mound. She then attacked Lloyd, who was above her. Lloyd was very surprised, thrown upwards, and then fell into Silpha's arms. Lloyd admitted his defeat. Upon arriving at the palace, Silpha still gave oil to Lloyd even though he lost in the duel. That's because Silpha was very grateful that Lloyd was not as weak as he was a while ago when Silpha fought against him. Lloyd was very grateful to Silpha. Silpha thought that Lloyd requested the oil to cook food. Lloyd re-entered the room with Grim. The two of them successfully obtained the necessary materials. All the ingredients were already concocted. Now, Lloyd met with his older brother, Albert, to get weapons. His brother was very impressed because Lloyd asked for a weapon to be used as an experiment for enchantment magic. Lloyd asked Albert for a weapon because he knew many guards accompanied him. Albert then asked his guards to give weapons to Lloyd. There were many weapons they collected, but the guards were sad because they had to give up their weapons for the experiments conducted by a child. Back in his room, Lloyd, assisted by his clone and Grim, was enthusiastic about making those weapons stronger. Diligently, Lloyd inscribed many spells onto the weapons. The first weapon was destroyed because it couldn't withstand all the spells Lloyd wrote. Lloyd didn't give up. He wrote various spells onto the other weapons. Some failed and some succeeded. Lloyd worked tirelessly overnight until the next day when he handed over 50 successful weapons to Albert and his guards. Meanwhile, 70 other weapons failed and were destroyed. Holding one of the successful swords, Albert thought to himself that even a first-class enchanter only had a success rate of about 10%. Albert thought that maybe his younger brother had talent far beyond what he had imagined. One of the guards there underestimated Lloyd, saying he didn't believe his weapons were stronger now. He said this as he put the sword back into its sheath, but he was surprised to find that the sheath had split. He thought maybe the scabbard was already damaged. Albert was intrigued by one of the swords emitting green light. Albert took it and felt there was power in the sword. Lloyd, seeing this, said he wanted to see the sword in action during a fight. Albert was enthusiastic. He said he would soon be tasked by his father to hunt monsters. Albert invited Lloyd along. Of course, Lloyd was very happy to hear that. Lloyd, Albert, and Silpha traveling by carriage. They are leaving the kingdom, heading towards a dense forest. As they enter the forest, Lloyd is very curious if there will be any monsters emerging from it. Silpha, who is sitting beside Lloyd, answers that supposedly monsters will appear near the lake they are heading to. Lloyd looks very excited because he rarely leaves the kingdom like this. Additionally, he can't wait to see the power of the weapons he enchanted. Albert, who is inside the carriage cabin, comments that Silpha and Albert seem very close. Silpha thanks Albert for allowing her to accompany him and his guards. Albert feels it's only natural since Silpha is Lloyd's bodyguard and teacher. Moreover, Albert adds that Silpha will surely miss Lloyd if he leaves the palace. Silpha responds that it's only natural since she is Lloyd's teacher. However, Albert then teases Silpha, suggesting that maybe she also has special feelings for Lloyd. With a smile, Silpha seems to draw her sword a little from its sheath. Albert gets scared seeing Silpha's behavior and says that he's just kidding. There are several wolf monsters carrying swords and shields attacking them. The royal guards in armor are ready to fight the monsters. Lloyd, still sitting in the carriage, just watches. Grim says that Lloyd actually sensed the arrival of the monsters. Lloyd acknowledges it because he used one of the kinjutsu taught by Tao, namely spectral detection. By using the breathing kinjutsu, Lloyd can sense the surrounding conditions all the time. Lloyd then watches as the royal guards fight the monsters. One of the royal guards can easily cleave shields and slash the monsters in front of him very easily. The other guards are very impressed to see that. Even the guard who did it is very impressed, wondering why his sword became so sharp. The other guards also feel the same way. They feel like cutting iron with their swords is very easy, so cutting iron shields feels like cutting paper. Lloyd is very happy to see it. He feels that the enchantment magic he did to those swords was very successful. Albert is very proud of his younger brother. Silpha confirms Albert's statement while holding her blood-stained sword and standing on a pile of defeated monsters. Lloyd feels scared seeing Silpha's true strength because he realizes that he didn't enchant her sword. As their attention was distracted, suddenly, a monster leaped to attack them. At that moment, Tao appeared and with a kick, she pushed the monster aside and defeated it. Tao said she detected the presence of the monster and came to help. Instantly, Lloyd reflexively greeted Tao, forgetting that he was now Lloyd, not Robert. Immediately, Tao looked at Lloyd suspiciously. She jumped in front of Lloyd and examined him closely. She knew that Lloyd had just used the Kinjutsu breathing technique. Tao kept observing Lloyd, whose breathing technique and face were very similar to Robert's. Lloyd and Tao were very surprised when a monster was slashed behind them. It was Silpha who did it. She thanked Tao for her help earlier, but also reminded Tao not to be rude. Tao argued that she didn't do anything to Lloyd. They both glared at each other fiercely. Lloyd just looked at the two of them with fear, while Albert tried to calm them down and invited them both to continue the journey together. Upon reaching the lake's edge, the group set up tents for the night. By the lakeside, Albert talked with Tao, expressing his gratitude for her help in getting them there. Albert then introduced himself, saying he was the second prince of the Saloum Kingdom. Of course, Tao was very surprised. She had just learned that Albert was a prince of the kingdom. Tao then apologized for her earlier rudeness while admiring Albert's handsomeness. Tao looked around, searching for Lloyd's whereabouts. Lloyd hid behind a tent, thinking that the Kinjutsu breathing technique for detecting presence could backfire on him. He didn't expect Tao's detection ability to be that strong. Lloyd decided to hide inside the tent until the monsters arrived. As he entered the tent, without realizing it, Lloyd bumped into Silpha, who was changing clothes because her previous attire was dirty and stained with blood. Lloyd was annoyed, wondering why Silpha was in his tent. Silpha casually replied that they were going to sleep together in that tent. Lloyd fell silent. Silpha reasoned that all the kingdom's soldiers outside the tent were only Albert's guards, so the only protector Lloyd had was Silpha. As he started to leave the tent, Lloyd said that he would actually be fine alone. Silpha didn't let Lloyd leave just like that. She pulled him back in and pinned him down with her foot. Suddenly, Tao lifted the tent flap where Lloyd was. She was surprised to see Silpha pinning Lloyd down with her foot. Feeling disturbed, Silpha threw a knife towards Tao. Silpha did that because she sensed the presence of a foolish person. Of course, Tao was angry and said that Silpha was a lewd maid. They both argued, and the royal guards were very excited to see them, especially happy to see Silpha not fully dressed. Lloyd quietly escaped from there. He felt that the current situation was more suffocating than in the palace. As Lloyd walked towards Albert, Albert said that Lloyd was a laddie killer. One of the reasons was when Albert noticed that Silpha had changed a lot since she often accompanied Lloyd. Albert argued that Silpha saw Lloyd as a man. However, Albert also advised Lloyd to be careful when dealing with women. The royal guards gathered to see Tao and Silpha arguing. They felt uncomfortable being looked at like that. The royal soldiers were quickly overwhelmed and incapacitated by Silpha and Tao. Albert continued his conversation with Lloyd, saying that women are indeed frightening. Lloyd agreed with that statement. After beating up the soldiers, Tao and Silpha finished their quarrel. Tao said she actually had an offer to renovate the temple on the hill near the lake. Silpha told Tao to leave and do her duty, but Albert came and told Tao to stay there for a while because she had a very useful detection ability. Albert suggested that Tao become a supervisor there and leave the next morning. However, suddenly a large-sized wolf-shaped monster named Bear Wolf approached them. Instantly, the monster attacked the troops. Lloyd observed them, realizing that Bear Wolf moved quickly despite its large size. Lloyd asked Grimm for his opinion on it, but Grimm fell silent. He was focused on looking at the ruins of the temple on the hill while trying to recall his memories of it. The royal troops were overwhelmed facing the monster. Luckily, Tao was able to knock down the monster with her Kinjutsu, making it stumble. But the monster still managed to rise again. Now, it was Albert's turn to prepare to attack the monster. He drew his sword from its sheath and recited a magic spell. His sword reacted as if supporting Albert from behind. Albert unleashed his magic, a huge fireball. Instantly, it burned the Bear Wolf and made it fall. Seeing this, everyone there cheered, praising Albert's strength in defeating the Bear Wolf in one strike. Albert argued that the power came from his magic sword, which had been strengthened with enchantment magic by Lloyd. Lloyd felt that he had successfully enchanted Albert's sword as well. Grimm then told Lloyd that he remembered that the temple nearby was the one that sealed the demon inside. Shortly after, magical energy shimmered from the burned body of the Bear Wolf, and the monster could rise again. Not only that, several other monsters appeared behind it. Then, a demon emerged from the mouth of the Bear Wolf. He said his name was Pazuzu. He wanted to avenge humans for what they had done to him. Instantly, Pazuzu ordered all the monsters there to attack. Albert and the others tried to defend themselves and counterattack the monsters, but when they managed to injure the monsters, they regenerated quickly and returned to their original state. Albert observed the monsters and suspected that they were not the usual monsters he faced. Albert suspected that the monsters were using Pazuzu's power. From his hiding place, Lloyd asked Grimm if Pazuzu was the demon who broke the seal and came out of the temple nearby. Grimm disagreed, but he knew that Pazuzu used magic and mana to control the monsters. It was like he was controlling them like puppets. The mana channeled made the monsters think that Pazuzu was their leader or something else. Clearly, Pazuzu made the monsters obey his will. Not only that, Pazuzu could also supply his mana through that thread and make the monsters regenerate very quickly. As long as they couldn't defeat Pazuzu, it would never end. Lloyd gleaned and begged Grimm to teach him about that technique. Grimm was surprised because the other troops were now in a life-and-death situation fighting the monsters, but Lloyd remained stubborn and insisted Grimm teach him. Seeing his opponent struggling, Pazuzu tried to confront Silpha, who remained silent while protecting Lloyd, who seemed unable to do anything. Pazuzu also mocked Lloyd, who could only hide. Of course, Silpha immediately became very angry hearing that, and Tao felt a burst of a deadly aura from there. Silpha then asked Lloyd for permission to leave him for a moment. Lloyd allowed her. Silpha walked forward towards Pazuzu. Pazuzu kept confronting her. Angry, Silpha said she felt disturbed because Pazuzu emitted a disturbing smell that Lloyd had to breathe. She argued that it was better to end it. Silpha drew her sword from its sheath. She was ready to fight. Pazuzu, still inside the bear wolf's body, tried to leap and attack Silpha. Pazuzu thought his attack would succeed, but Silpha moved faster. She appeared to be back where the bear wolf was and had already cut off all 4 of bear wolf's legs before he could leap. Pazuzu looked very upset. He used his magic to regenerate bear wolf's legs. Albert and Tao noticed that when Pazuzu did that, the other monsters seemed to stop moving, and their regeneration became slower. Albert predicted that it was because Pazuzu was now focused on restoring bear wolf he was riding. Albert also thought that if Pazuzu could be defeated, he and his troops would have a chance to win. Albert then instructed Silpha to beat up the bear wolf ridden by Pazuzu as much as possible. Elsewhere, Grimm was still teaching Lloyd about the magic technique used by Pazuzu. He said that the magic technique was a difficult one. Pazuzu had an advantage, which was turning his magic power into a nature that suited those monsters and making them want to keep working for him. Grimm said that the first step to perform the magic was to give color to the magic, then control the shape, smell, and so on. Without Grimm realizing it, Lloyd could already make a flower with pink color, green leaves, and a pleasant smell. On the other hand, Silpha was still attacking Pazuzu with her sword. She also asked one of the soldiers to lend her his sword. The sword she borrowed was the one enchanted by Lloyd's magic. Silpha felt very happy and touched to hold the sword. Pazuzu confronted Silpha again, saying that he would attack the child protected by Silpha and mess him up. Silpha looked silent, very angry. From behind, Pazuzu attacked her. The bear wolf he was riding seemed to have successfully bitten Silpha with its mouth. Pazuzu was overjoyed, feeling he had succeeded in defeating the human by provoking her. But Pazuzu was wrong. Silpha, already inside the bear wolf's mouth, easily stabbed the roof of the bear wolf's mouth, then split the monster's body in 2. Silpha then jumped out from the top. Holding 2 swords in her hands, she said her sword technique was called House of Langlis, Dual Blade Art. Twin Dragons Rising. Silpha continued her surprising attack. She managed to skin and cut the bear wolf's neck with her 2 swords. Pazuzu looked very angry. His face was now clearly visible because nothing covered it anymore. Silpha continued her attack. She stabbed her 2 swords directly into the demon's face. Silpha kept beating him, making Pazuzu come out of the bear wolf's body. Pazuzu looked helpless facing Silpha. Everyone who saw it was stunned with a look of fear, seeing how strong Silpha was. Silpha approached Pazuzu and pointed her sword at the helpless Pazuzu. In episode 5, Silpha is still pointing her sword at Pazuzu, who has already fallen. Meanwhile, Lloyd and Grimm are engrossed in their magic experiment, hiding behind a barrel. Silpha suggests that Pazuzu should just surrender, but Pazuzu instead smiles and releases some kind of smoke that makes anyone who inhales it weak. The soldiers, Albert and Silpha, fall to the ground after inhaling the smoke. Now, it is Pazuzu who can stand tall, and he spreads the 4 wings on his back. With all his might, he strikes the helpless Silpha, sending her flying towards the lake. Albert sees this and desperately wants to help Silpha, but he cannot move his body. Pazuzu flies into the air and heads towards Silpha. saying that anyone who inhales the smoke will become his. This is the miasma of domination. Even in her powerless state, Silpha mocks Pazuzu, saying that the smoke he produces smells very foul. Pazuzu, enraged, launches an attack on Silpha, but fortunately, Tao intercepts the blow. Tao still appears fit and able to stand tall. Pazuzu remarks that even monsters wouldn't last 30 seconds after inhaling his miasma. Moving incredibly fast, Pazuzu suddenly appears behind Tao, curious as to why Tao seems unaffected by his miasma. Swiftly, Tao kicks Pazuzu, but Pazuzu dodges. Now, Pazuzu captures Tao's leg with his tail, then strikes her and lifts her into the air. Pazuzu then analyzes that Tao can use an unusual breathing technique to withstand his miasma of domination. In her desperate state, Tao seizes an opportunity to attack Pazuzu when he is off guard. She unleashes the Thunderquake Pulse, throwing Pazuzu to the ground. Tao then tries to catch her breath again, but suddenly, a monster grabs her from behind. Tao struggles to keep the monster's large mouth from swallowing her. Pazuzu approaches and releases his miasma, inviting Tao to join him. But of course, Tao is unaffected by it. Due to her extreme exhaustion, Tao cannot resist the strength of the monster's mouth and is swallowed whole, ending up in the monster's stomach. Pazuzu's attention now shifts to Silpha, considering her a suitable replacement for his deceased minion. Pazuzu lifts Silpha with his tail and releases his miasma again. Not far from there, Lloyd sees this and remarks that this must be how Pazuzu conquers the bearwolves. Pazuzu confirms this, explaining that he first kills the mother of the bearwolves, then influences the young ones with his miasma, making them see him as their parent. Lloyd considers this to be very cruel. In great surprise, Pazuzu suddenly realized why Lloyd could move freely and wasn't affected at all by his miasma. He asked Lloyd about it, but Lloyd was also puzzled. Pazuzu was even more shocked when he saw Grim. He knew Grim was a demon, yet he was cooperating with humans. Pazuzu laughed at him because Grim looked so cute. Grim was actually very angry at this mockery, but he held back. He wanted to give Pazuzu some advice as a fellow demon, but Grim decided to just watch Pazuzu suffer. Ignoring Grim's words, Pazuzu ordered his monster minions to attack Lloyd and Grim. Lloyd, who had been learning about mana transmutation magic, was eager to practice it now. Lloyd cast his spell, and instantly, the area in front of him transformed into a field of flowers. The monsters became tame towards Lloyd. Surrounded by the large monsters, Lloyd lovingly petted them. He successfully took control of the monsters from Pazuzu. Lloyd then commanded the monster that had swallowed Tao to spit her out. Tao emerged from the monster's mouth unconscious but appeared to be fine. Seeing all this, Pazuzu was astonished and acknowledged that Lloyd was a great magician. Pazuzu released his miasma towards the monsters again, hoping they would obey him once more. But it was useless. The monsters had regained their memories of how Pazuzu enslaved them and killed their mother. With full speed, the monsters attacked Pazuzu simultaneously. However, their strength was no match for Pazuzu, who easily deflected their attacks and counterattacked. Pazuzu was now furious with Lloyd for destroying his ambitions. Pazuzu believed he would win because magical attacks wouldn't affect demons. This only made Lloyd more curious about why demons couldn't be killed by magic. Lloyd got serious and prepared to attack Pazuzu, releasing his magical power. Pazuzu was stunned by the magnitude of Lloyd's magic. Now, Pazuzu understood why his miasma didn't affect Lloyd. It was because Lloyd's immense magical power left no room for the miasma to enter. Pazuzu became very frightened by such a vast amount of magical energy. Suddenly, a barrier spell appeared near Pazuzu, but he managed to dodge it. Pazuzu was confused about why Lloyd wasn't attacking with offensive magic, but instead using barrier magic. Pazuzu finally realized that Lloyd was trying to trap him within the barrier to capture him. Pazuzu fled at full speed. Lloyd continuously cast barrier spells in Pazuzu's direction. Pazuzu dodged them with all his might. However, with Lloyd's incredible speed at casting spells, Pazuzu eventually got caught in one of the barriers Lloyd created. Pazuzu tried to escape from the barrier, knowing he would become a test subject, but his efforts were in vain. Lloyd saw that Pazuzu had made the bearwolves his test subjects, so he thought Pazuzu shouldn't complain. Lloyd then began chanting his spell at full speed. Panicking, Pazuzu could only fly around inside the barrier. He tried to persuade Lloyd to stop his attack, but it was all in vain. Pazuzu said he had never been hit by such a high-level spell before and that it might kill him. Ignoring him, Lloyd continued chanting his spell. He planned to attack with 4 high-level magic techniques in 100 consecutive rounds. Lloyd could cast 240 spells in 1 minute and intended to continue for the next 30 minutes. The continuous barrage of magic struck Pazuzu, leaving him helpless and resigned to his fate. As the sun rose, Lloyd stopped his magic attack and checked on Pazuzu. Lloyd thought Pazuzu was dead. Inside the barrier, Pazuzu lay motionless, having turned gray. Lloyd remarked that he did it in less than 5 minutes. Grimm then commented that magic does affect demons, similar to how sound and light affect humans. But if continuously subjected to such high levels, the result would be like Pazuzu now. Albert and the soldiers began to regain consciousness, and Lloyd panicked, running towards them. Grimm approached Pazuzu and said that no one cared about the bitterness he had gone through and that it would be more enjoyable to live without feeling burdened. Pazuzu started crumbling into dust and gradually disappearing. Before fully disappearing, Pazuzu entrusted his ambitions to Grimm. Grimm accepted this and absorbed Pazuzu, who had turned to dust, into his mouth. Grimm slightly recovered thanks to Pazuzu's magical power. Meanwhile, Lloyd lied to Albert and the others, saying that it was a great wizard named Robert who defeated Pazuzu. Hearing this, Tao became excited and looked around for him. The next day at the palace, Albert and Lloyd met with the king. The king greatly appreciated Albert for defeating both the monster and the demon. The king also heard about Robert and Tao helping Albert, but Albert said that Robert had suddenly disappeared and Tao had gone to look for Robert, so they hadn't had a chance to thank him. Albert then said that the most credit actually went to Lloyd, as Lloyd had made weapons imbued with magic for them, allowing them to defeat the monster easily. In front of the king, Albert suggested that Lloyd should also be a candidate to inherit the throne. Even though he was still young, it was not a problem. Hearing this suggestion, the king appreciated it and offered Lloyd the opportunity to compete for the throne. However, with an innocent look, Lloyd declined the offer. After that, Lloyd was seen happily playing with one of the bear wolves. It turned out that one bear wolf had followed him back to the kingdom, even though the other bear wolves were still in the forest. This bear wolf seemed very tame and obedient to Lloyd. Silpha approached them, and Lloyd introduced his bear wolf, which he had now named Shiro. Lloyd told Silpha that there were many things he wanted to teach Shiro, but he was unsure how to communicate them. While Lloyd and Silpha were chatting, Grimm, hiding in the bear wolf's fur, wondered why Lloyd so easily rejected the throne. But seeing Lloyd, it was clear he was only interested in magic techniques. From the top of the palace, the king and Albert watched Lloyd talking in the garden. The king remarked that Lloyd was a very humble child. Albert suggested that perhaps Lloyd was indeed the one most suited to become the next king of the kingdom. In episode 6, Lloyd is with Silpha, watching Shiro obediently follow the simple commands given by Lloyd. Shiro can promptly follow basic instructions like sitting, standing, shaking hands, and so on. However, Lloyd is still confused because he cannot command Shiro to do something more complex, like spinning around 3 times and then barking, or running quickly to a specific point. Lloyd has tried using magical power by writing it in the air and then throwing it to Shiro, but Shiro doesn't understand it. Hearing this, Silpha has a suggestion: to meet someone who understands the intricacies of monsters, a monster expert. They agree to visit Miss Ali's in her miniature garden. They eventually arrive at Miss Ali's place. She is the 6th princess of the Saloon Kingdom and is 3 years older than Lloyd. Ali's is a true animal lover. She lives with many animals such as dogs and cats, as well as insects and birds, and even monsters in her miniature garden. Suddenly, Ali's leaps towards Lloyd, pinning him down and kissing him. Of course, Silpha, Grimm, and Shiro are very surprised to see this. Lloyd appears to faint after receiving such treatment. Even a maid named Iris, who usually accompanies Ali's, is puzzled as to why Ali's suddenly ran and jumped like that. Ali's excuses herself by saying that Lloyd is adorable. Shiro appears very tame and immediately gets along with Ali's. Lloyd is puzzled to see this, while Ali's says it's instinct and possibly also the influence of magical power. Whispering slightly, Silpha suggests to Lloyd that they should leave the place because it turns out Alice does not understand magical power at all. Hence, she might not know how to understand the hearts of monsters well. Hearing this, Lloyd decides to be a little more patient and asks Alice to call her pet monster as well. Unexpectedly, Alice has already done so. A monster is already behind Lloyd and has even taken Silpha's headband with its mouth. Naturally, Lloyd and Silpha are very surprised. Alice then introduces her monster. It is named Riru, a lesser Fenrir, the highest species of beer wolf. Lloyd is still puzzled by the recent events because he didn't detect Riru's arrival at all, suddenly finding it behind him. Furthermore, Lloyd is confused because he didn't see Alice commanding Riru to come, let alone take Silpha's headband. Lloyd becomes very curious about how Alice gives many commands to Riru without any movement at all. Lloyd then asks Alice to teach him how he and Shiro can understand each other. Alice happily tells Lloyd that the secret to understanding animals is love. Of course, Lloyd can only stand there, amazed at hearing this. Alice reiterates her statement, saying that with love, no matter what kind of monster, they will be able to understand each other. Right after she says this, all the animals there run towards her and hug Alice. With this, Alice proves that only with love can these animals be obedient and tame towards her. Lloyd and Silpha watched this with great admiration. Then Eris suggested that Lloyd should just give up because taming animals is a talent that Alice possesses. However, Alice responded that anyone could do it by expressing the feelings they have towards the animals. Once again, without being commanded, the animals ran and started playing tricks on Silpha and Eris. While trying to remove the animals clinging to her body, Silpha reiterated that they should just go home because love is something abstract and hard to learn. Lloyd seemed silent and Silpha thought that maybe Lloyd was interested in love. Silpha imagined Lloyd hugging her and asking her to teach him about love. Lloyd seemed to understand something. He realized that what Alice did with the animals was not about giving commands, but sharing with them. It could be seen when the animals moved in unison. Lloyd felt a magical power flowing directly from Alice's head to the animals. So it wasn't from Alice's hands, but from head to head. Alice, without realizing it, had connected with the animals through her magical power, giving them a direct visual of what she wanted. Instead of giving a command, she shared a mental image. Lloyd then had a breakthrough and tried it with Shiro. Shiro connected with Lloyd and spun around 3 times, then jumped and barked. As Lloyd had envisioned it, Shiro executed it perfectly. Eris was very impressed, even considering that Lloyd also had the talent of a monster tamer. But Alice didn't want to accept that it was due to complex factors like desire, control, or anything else, insisting that it was all because of love. Lloyd then responded that love is indeed a very important factor. Everything could be done if there was love and empathy for the animals. Otherwise, they wouldn't listen to them. Hearing this, Alice, Silpha, Eris, and the animals felt happy and they all hugged Lloyd together. Lloyd and Silpha then started to leave the place. On the way, Lloyd was grateful because now he could understand how to connect with monsters. Silpha was also grateful for that, and in her opinion, now was the right time for Lloyd to train swordsmanship with her. Lloyd really didn't want to do it, but as usual, he couldn't refuse her. Fortunately, Albert was there and said that he had some business with Lloyd. The two of them argued, and then the 4th prince, named Dayan, arrived. Then, they went to Dayan's headquarters. Dayan is a blacksmith and had heard that Lloyd had enchanted Albert's spellbound sword. Lloyd confirmed this news. Dayan didn't actually believe in Lloyd's abilities and now wanted to see for himself. He challenged Lloyd to prove it. Whispering, Albert mentioned that Dayan, at the age of 10, was already very skilled in blacksmithing and even went to study in the neighboring country of Bartram. Dayan was also interested in enchanted magic. Eagerly, Dayan asked Lloyd to enchant a sword he had prepared. Lloyd began writing the magic incantation on the sword, with Dayan watching closely. It was then that he realized Lloyd possessed a truly unique enchanting technique that made him both quick and precise. When Dayan held the sword, he was amazed because the sword had been enhanced with increased strength, elasticity, self-cleaning, and self-repair abilities, all at once. Dayan now acknowledged Lloyd's prowess. Proudly, Dayan praised Lloyd, saying that with Lloyd's help, he might be able to achieve his dream of creating the ultimate spellbound sword. This weapon would be different from other enchanted weapons because it would be perfected during the forging of the steel, allowing for an even higher level of enchantment magic. If they worked together, they could possibly create the strongest weapon. Dayan admitted that he had loved magic since he was a child, but felt it was impossible because he lacked the talent for it. Dayan then envisioned fire appearing and wind blowing from a sword with every swing. He wanted to make it possible for everyone in the country to use magic by owning such a magic sword. Naturally, Lloyd was excited. He was very curious and wanted to learn the process from Dayan. They immediately started the process of creating the magic sword. The first sword Dayan wanted to create was one with fire magic. Lloyd agreed, wanting to imbue it with Perlin's Insinus magic. Dayan laughed, thinking it impossible because the formula for Perlin's Insinus had a lengthy incantation of 14 lines, while a spellbound sword could only hold a maximum of 5 lines. Lloyd had a solution. He would compress it into just 2 lines. Dayan held the glowing hot steel ready for forging, while Lloyd tried to attach the magic incantation he had created to the glowing steel. Unexpectedly, the hot steel shattered, unable to withstand the magic incantation Lloyd had made. Lloyd didn't give up and then compressed the magic incantation into 4 lines. However, the materials still couldn't handle the magic incantation. Silpha and Shiro, curious as well, came to help them. Lloyd became confused because he had already reduced the intensity of his magic to just normal fireball magic, yet the steel still couldn't hold it. Grin noticed something unusual about the mana essence they were using. Dayan then admitted that he had acquired a lot of mana essence at a low price. Using purification magic, Lloyd broke down the components in the mana essence provided by Dayan. It turned out there was very little hematite in it. According to Lloyd, it might be enough for regular enchanting, but for a spellbound sword, a higher concentration was needed. Hematite is a rare material from monster cores that is difficult to obtain. Silpha then suggested that they hunt monsters in the dungeon to get hematite. Lloyd and Silpha then went to the guild and met the guild receptionist named Katarina. Silpha intended to register Lloyd as an adventurer. Lloyd filled out the form provided, and then he had to touch a crystal to measure his abilities and determine his rank. Lloyd was worried the crystal might explode when measuring his magical power, making him very conspicuous. So he tried to minimize the magic power within himself, reducing it to the size of a water flea. Lloyd touched the crystal, which showed his current level as E. Some men behind Lloyd laughed at him, saying that even the worst should at least get level D. However, Katarina saw the status on the magic crystal and considered it extraordinary because his magic power rating was A, comparable to an experienced sorcerer. Lloyd was confused by this because he had already suppressed his magic power to just 1% of his original power. Katarina then said that Lloyd was a very promising new adventurer, worthy of being a rival to Silverblader. The men behind Lloyd strongly disagreed with Katarina's statement because Silverblader was a legend with demon-like strength who had conquered countless dungeons. He also had a rank before he disappeared. Lloyd and Silpha ignored their remarks and asked Katarina for a dungeon mission. Katarina explained that a dungeon mission required at least one B-ranked adventurer to be involved. Hearing this, Silpha decided to re-register herself. Suddenly, a bald man tried to flirt with Silpha, suggesting she go to the dungeon with him instead. Swiftly, Silpha drew her sword and quickly cut off the man's mustache. The man immediately backed off in fear. Katarina then said that the man had picked the wrong woman to mess with, revealing that Silpha's true identity was Silverblader. The group of men was terrified upon hearing this. Responding to Silpha's request to re-register herself, Katarina explained that if Silpha re-registered, she would have to drop 2 ranks, to rank C. Unexpectedly, Tao arrived and offered her assistance while flirting with Lloyd. Feeling uneasy, Silpha tried to take Lloyd home, but Tao stopped her. She mentioned that she couldn't find Robert, and in return for her help, she wanted to be paired with Albert, or at least have tea with him. Lloyd was impressed by Silpha, as it turned out she had once been a great adventurer. Silpha felt embarrassed because her identity was now known to Lloyd. She shared that during her time as an adventurer, she had encountered a group she couldn't defeat, known as the Assassin's Guild. After leaving the guild, they headed to the dungeon, defeated several monsters, and retrieved treasure chests that could be extracted for hematite. Shortly after, Lloyd, Silpha, and Shiro returned to the kingdom with the necessary materials. Dayan and Lloyd then continued forging the steel, and with proper materials, they were finally able to attach the magical spell to the heated steel for forging. They successfully created a powerful sword. Dayan tested the sword in the training area, and with just one swing, the sword released a massive fireball, causing an extraordinary explosion. The sword was then named Dillard. Night fell, and Lloyd lay in his room to rest. He felt extremely exhausted after spending the whole day making multiple spellbound swords. Lloyd hadn't fallen asleep yet when he sensed something in the royal castle's garden. He was slightly confused about it, as there were no signs at all. It was like a gaping hole there. Even Shiro, who was sensitive, hadn't noticed it. Peeking out from his bedroom window, Lloyd saw someone in the garden. In this episode 7, Lloyd directly jumps in front of the intruder in the garden. Of course, the intruder is shocked and immediately tries to flee, but Lloyd has already set up a barrier there, so the intruder cannot escape through the barrier that Lloyd has placed. Calmly, Lloyd tries to approach the intruder, who then quickly opens their cloak, revealing herself as a woman with purple hair. As soon as the intruder opens her cloak, Lloyd smells a sweet and fragrant floral scent. Lloyd starts to feel a bit dizzy and numb, thinking that it might be poison. Immediately, Lloyd uses healing and purification magic on himself. However, his efforts turn out to be in vain, as the intruder claims that her poison cannot be purified by anyone. In his heart, Lloyd says that purification magic is a technique that can detoxify any poison. If it doesn't work, then this must be an unknown poison. The composition of the poison has changed through magic. Indeed, there are a handful of people born with unique magical abilities, especially those whose powers bring disaster to those around them, and are thus ostracized by many people. The intruder then states that she is cursed with poison because she was born with it and spreads it. She is nicknamed Ren the Poison Moth. Ren then moves towards the barrier, touches it with her foot, and kicks it, causing the barrier to shatter. Lloyd sees this and thinks that Ren might have used her poison to melt and break the barrier. Ren then says that Lloyd only inhaled a small amount of her poison, so he will not die, but will suffer for 2 or 3 days. Ren jumps away and disappears. Lloyd is very impressed to see Ren disappear without a trace. Grim then approaches Lloyd, who surprisingly has recovered with just a little healing and purification magic. Grim asks why Lloyd let the intruder escape. It turns out that Lloyd did it on purpose to find out where their headquarters is located. Lloyd suspects that Ren is one of the Assassin's Guild that Silpha had faced before. Silpha mentioned that they are very skilled at erasing traces and each has special powers. Lloyd is curious, thinking that maybe all 6 of the members have unique elements. Lloyd is able to see the direction where Ren fled. Ren indeed erased her traces, but it is still easy to track because she punctures space when erasing her traces, and it is easy once the point is found. Lloyd then jumps out of the palace to pursue Ren. In another place, several people are gathered. Ren is also there, and a man receives a report from Ren that she was discovered while infiltrating and escaped without killing. Ren excuses herself by saying that the one who caught her was just a child. However, Ren did not return empty-handed. She obtained information that the kingdom is mass-producing magic swords, which she believes is a sign of war preparations. A woman with pink hair interrupted their conversation because she sensed someone was watching them. Sure enough, Lloyd, using his invisibility magic, had already sneaked in and was hiding on the ceiling. Since he was discovered, he revealed himself and descended. Ren was very surprised to see Lloyd looking fine, as he should still be affected by her poison and unable to move. A large man recognized Lloyd as the 7th prince. Lloyd walked towards them and then deactivated the barrier surrounding his body. Naturally, Grim, who was nearby, was very shocked. Why would Lloyd deactivate his barrier in such a situation? Lloyd explained that since there were many people with special powers in front of him, it would be a shame to avoid those abilities. Lloyd wanted to experience and feel their attacks. Lloyd then activated his trace magic, imitating Tao's martial arts technique, and challenged the members of the Assassin's Guild to attack him. A man with green hair and a black cloak stepped forward and attacked Lloyd with a kick, which Lloyd successfully blocked. The man continued to attack Lloyd with kicks, impressed that Lloyd could deflect all his attacks. He hadn't expected that the prince could also fight. The man launched another attack, and unexpectedly, his hand became very flexible, able to reach Lloyd's body. The man admitted that he was born with a flexible body and was usually nicknamed Babylon, the giant rat. Then another man suddenly appeared behind Lloyd and said a single word, "Sink." Suddenly, Lloyd's body felt very heavy, as if pressed down to the ground. The large man then introduced the masked man as Crow the Dark Raptor. He was cursed so that every word he spoke carried magical power. Therefore, he usually limited his speech to prevent chaos. The large man then approached Lloyd and tried to punch him, but luckily Lloyd used reinforcement magic on his body, enabling him to move again and dodge the attack. However, Lloyd's body was suddenly covered by something sticky, resembling a spider's web. It turned out to be the power of the large man, whose magical energy enveloping his body transformed into slime. The man's name was Galilea the Spider. He managed to escape from Galilea's web by discarding his clothes. However, he was then attacked by a woman with pink hair wielding 2 swords. Lloyd could deflect all her attacks, but unexpectedly, the woman stabbed herself in the leg, and miraculously, Lloyd's leg was also wounded in the same way. The woman introduced herself as Talia the 100 Pains. She could inflict the same injuries she experienced onto anyone she saw. Lloyd was increasingly amazed by their special abilities, which defied logic and piqued his curiosity even more. Effortlessly, Lloyd healed his leg wound with healing magic. Surprisingly, Talia's leg wound also healed. Lloyd wondered what would happen if he injured Talia. Would the effect be the same? He wanted to test this directly. He used reinforcement magic on the cloth he was holding, turning it into a makeshift sword, and with trace magic, he mimicked Silpha's sword princess technique. Lloyd was curious to see how the Assassin's Guild members would defend themselves. Swiftly, Lloyd jumped towards them. They were startled and dodged as Lloyd approached. Lloyd's first target was Babylon, whose body tried to lessen the impact of the attack and became limp. Galilea and Crow simultaneously jumped at Lloyd. Crow uttered the word smash, but Lloyd quickly dodged, causing Galilea to be hit by Crow's words. Galilea's body was flung backward and collided with Talia. Now it was Crow's turn to be Lloyd's target. Lloyd attacked with both swords, copying Silpha's move, Twin Dragon Rising. Crow attempted to stop Lloyd's attack with his cursed words, but couldn't complete his incantation in time. Crow collapsed, struck by Lloyd's attack. After that, Lloyd attacked Tanya, but Tanya managed to deflect his attack. Tanya then reminded Lloyd that if he injured her, Lloyd's body would also get hurt because their bodies were now connected. However, Lloyd was curious and wanted to experience it, which naturally surprised Tanya. Lloyd attacked Tanya with the Wolf Fang technique, causing Tanya's body to be thrown hard against the wall. Indeed, Lloyd's body felt the same pain that Tanya did. Lloyd then turned his attention to Ren, wanting to experience her poison as well. But with his body injured, Galilea tried to protect Ren, telling Lloyd to step back because Ren couldn't control her poison, which could poison everyone there. Lloyd then thought that it seemed the same for everyone, they couldn't control their abilities. Galilea confirmed Lloyd's observation, saying they were indeed cursed with their powers. Galilea then moved forward, attempting to catch Lloyd with his web, but Lloyd managed to dodge, and from behind, he placed his hand on Galilea while casting a spell. Ren thought the spell would harm Galilea and angrily attacked Lloyd. Lloyd activated his barrier to deflect Ren's attack. Unexpectedly, Galilea said he was fine, even better, as he could now control his magical power. Lloyd explained that Galilea could now control his power because Lloyd had inscribed a magic technique directly onto Galilea's body. If they couldn't control it themselves, it was better to be controlled by someone else. Lloyd's inscribed technique circulated the magical power within the body. This was Lloyd's first time inscribing a magic technique onto a human body, but it seemed to work well. Everyone there was astonished, and Galilea appeared to cry with joy, as he never thought he could finally control his curse. Lloyd then offered the same to the other members of the Assassin's Guild. In the end, everyone could control their magical powers. They were all very happy, especially Crow, who could now speak normally without fearing his cursed words would harm others. Babylon's body no longer stretched uncontrollably. Ren was also very happy, as she could now wear any clothes without worrying about her poison leaking from her body. The members of the Assassin's Guild, especially Tanya and Crow, became very close with Lloyd, even making clothes for him. Ren protested, saying that Lloyd was an intruder and that he was in their kingdom to mass-produce spellbound swords for war. Grimm then denied it, explaining that Lloyd was making those swords because it was his hobby. Then, in a serious tone, Galilea said there was something important he wanted to discuss. Galilea narrated the origins of the Assassin's Guild and their leader, Jade the Shadow Wolf, who was cursed with illusions and had the power of teleportation. In a flashback, it showed their leader, Jade, returning to their base after being missing for a long time. He had been wandering in a vast desert. Because of his illusion curse, he was transported to various places against his will. Jade presented a coin with a wolf image as the symbol for the Assassin's Guild. From then on, they would take on missions that the adventurer guilds couldn't accept, handling dark cases. After completing a mission, they were required to leave the coin so that the adventurer guild would know that they played a role in maintaining world peace. The hope was that one day they could lead normal lives and no longer hide in the shadows. Before Jade could finish his speech, his teleportation ability suddenly activated and he vanished. After that, the members of the Assassin's Guild continued to take on missions that the Adventurer Guild couldn't handle, seeing a glimmer of hope. However, they soon received news that the leader of the Lourdes clan was preparing for war. As Galilea recounted this, a letter suddenly appeared in their midst, stamped with the Assassin's Guild logo. Time passed, and Silpha and Shiro were seen in a panic, breaking through the sewer walls. They were searching for Lloyd, who hadn't returned to the palace, relying on Shiro's sense of smell. Silpha also caught Lloyd's scent in the sewers. Then, Shiro found a piece of paper with writing and Lloyd's signature. They took the letter back to the palace. With trembling hands, Albert read the letter, which stated that Lloyd had gone to the residence of the Lourdes clan leader with friends from the Assassin's Guild. Albert couldn't believe it, given the current tense situation. Albert also wondered why Lloyd would go with the Assassin's Guild. Then Albert thought that perhaps the Lourdes clan was working with the Assassin's Guild to kidnap Lloyd as a hostage. Albert appeared emotional, but Diane tried to calm him down, suggesting that it might just be Albert's assumption and that Lloyd wouldn't be kidnapped so easily. Albert calmed down a bit, thinking that war was the last resort, and he was committed to avoiding bloodshed. Albert believed that Lloyd was a strong child and would not be defeated by kidnappers. Silpha then approached Albert while showing Lloyd's clothes that had been left at the scene. Albert was shocked and highly suspicious that they had done something bad to Lloyd, as they had removed his clothes, which were covered in a disgusting sticky substance. Knowing this, Albert became very angry and decided to launch a surprise attack. Of course, Silpha, who had been holding back her emotions all this time, strongly agreed with the decision. Elsewhere, the members of the Assassin's Guild were seen flying and being dragged through the air at great speed, using magic from Lloyd. In Episode 8, it showcases the enthusiastic response of the members of the Assassin's Guild upon receiving a letter from Jade. The letter stated that Jade apologized for not returning for a long time, and now he had defeated the rulers of the Lourdes clan who had been preparing for war, and he had become the head of the clan. He invited all the guild members to join him. Jade had prepared a welcoming party at the Lourdes palace and also invited them to live with him. Of course, all the guild members cheered joyfully at this good news. Lloyd then took and examined the letter from Jade. The scene then returns to the present time, where Lloyd and all the members of the Assassin's Guild are flying at very high speed with Lloyd's magic. Due to the high speed, Ren felt nauseous and her body couldn't take it, so she asked Lloyd to stop. Lloyd continued, reminding her that it was Ren herself who wanted Lloyd to come with them to meet Jade, because she wanted Lloyd to heal Jade too. Hearing this, Lloyd explained that a letter sent via teleportation with perfect coordinates was an extraordinary feat, as teleportation is one of the most difficult techniques that no one has ever been able to master. In other words, Jade could control this curse. Hearing this, Galilea and Teria thought that Jade might have been lying to them all this time. They were also suspicious that the letter might be a trap. Lloyd then assured them to meet Jade, because they all trusted him. In case anything unexpected happened, Lloyd would be ready to act. Lloyd decided to descend, and when they reached the ground, the members of the Assassin's Guild looked weak and exhausted. Lloyd was surprised to see this because they had been flying for less than 10 minutes. Seeing this, Lloyd decided to walk the rest of the way as the distance was not much further. Lloyd also suggested taking a short rest. Ren then happily volunteered to find something in the forest for them to eat together. Babylon explained that Ren grew up in the forest and might want to show off her skills to Lloyd. Ren accidentally killed her parents when she was a child, and since then, she lived in the forest. The person who saved Ren was Jade. Jade brought Ren, wrapped like a mummy, to the headquarters and said he had a new member, Ren, who had a poison curse. Of course, the others disagreed because they were afraid they would be affected by her poison as well. But Jade insisted, saying it was fine, and even remarked that Ren smelled like flowers. Despite that, Jade was still affected by Ren's poison. Seeing Jade like that, the guild members finally agreed for Ren to stay there with them. Afterward, Jade, Crow, and Teria design clothes for Ren to prevent the poison from escaping her body. Finally, Ren's outfit was ready. Ren was very happy because the outfit had a magical technique to prevent the poison, and it was also very easy to put on and take off. So, besides being fashionable, the outfit was very functional. Ren cried tears of joy. Since then, Jade has been considered an older brother to Ren. Not long after, the food Ren cooked was ready. However, everyone there doubted the dish because of its disgusting appearance. Ren said that the dish was an instant stew made from the natural wealth of the forest. Teria then whispered to Ren that Lloyd was a prince, and she shouldn't cook something like that. But unexpectedly, Lloyd was already eating Ren's dish heartily. Everyone was shocked. Lloyd then said that the dish was delicious. Lloyd remembered that in his previous world, he had once made a far worse dish because he was poor. Babylon then said that for someone like him, who came from the slums, the dish was very frightening. But Lloyd ate it with such gusto. After the others tried it, they found out that Ren's cooking was indeed very tasty. Gallia couldn't believe that Ren had cooking skills because previously, Ren must have been afraid her poison would mix into the food, so she couldn't cook. Ren looked very happy and expressed a strong desire for Jade to eat her cooking as well. Then, in a flashback, Jade was seen talking to the other members. With a serious tone, Jade told his friends that he had always claimed to be an ordinary traveler. But actually, he was a member of the Lourdes clan and the third son of the clan head. The Lourdes clan was known for approaching people to manipulate them. Currently, the Lourdes clan was controlled by Jade's father and brothers, who were like demons. Every day, they were always planning wars like bloodthirsty monsters. Jade really wanted to stop those war plans, and to achieve this, Jade needed power and friends. So, he approached the current members of the Assassin's Guild and formed a team. Jade admitted that he used his friends and sincerely apologized. But unexpectedly, the other members of the Assassin's Guild reacted very calmly, not at all worried about Jade's explanation. Whatever Jade's current identity to them, Jade was the person who gave them hope. Gallia said that Jade could use them without having to tell them. They also wanted to help Jade by eliminating his brothers. But Jade refused, saying it was his own business. He didn't want to involve and burden his friends. Jade asked his friends to promise to continue the Assassin's Guild if he couldn't return. And if he did return, he would become the head of the clan and make Lourdes a place where cursed people could live happily. Jade wanted to live there with his friends. Back in the present time, Lloyd and the members of the Assassin's Guild continue their journey. Lloyd is seen sleeping while being carried by Gallia. Ren then suggests that they let Lloyd rest while they scout the Lourdes palace. Ren is a bit suspicious, thinking there is a possibility that the letter was written by Jade under threat from his clan members. The others agree, wanting to lighten Lloyd's burden even if just a little. Finally, they head to the Lourdes palace, leaving Lloyd asleep in the grass. Upon reaching the palace, they observe from atop a building and see a banquet being held. Many people are gathered there, and it seems there are no intentions to kill. Grimm suggests they return to the palace with Lloyd later. But suddenly someone approaches them, a man who also knows they are from the Assassin's Guild. They are warmly welcomed with delicious food and drinks prepared especially for them. The atmosphere at the palace looks very peaceful, and everyone is enjoying the party. The much-anticipated arrival of Jade, who is now the clan leader, finally happens. Jade, wearing the grand attire of the clan leader, impresses the members of the Assassin's Guild. Seeing this, Jade changes his clothes to the ones he usually wears outside, using his teleportation magic. Gallia and the others are amazed to see that Jade has mastered teleportation magic perfectly. Jade says he mastered it thanks to diligent practice. They are very grateful to hear this. Grimm pushes Ren towards Jade, knowing that she misses him very much. In front of Jade, Ren shyly tries to say something but becomes very awkward and cannot express herself. Grimm is touched by the reunion and decides to fly to bring Lloyd there as well. However, the emotional atmosphere quickly turns ominous when Jade and the people there reveal their true forms. Jade utters the word kneel, and immediately, the members of the Assassin's Guild fall into a kneeling position. The magic is similar to the curse on Crow. Crow also realizes that the power of this magic is much stronger than the spell he used. Jade offers the people there the choice to select one of the Assassin's Guild members according to their desires. Jade mentions that there are many variations of cursed individuals, one of whom is Ren, who has a poison curse. Grin, who has already flown above the palace building, tries to attack Jade with his magic and orders them to escape. Grim looks very frightened. Surprisingly, Jade suddenly appears behind Grim and kicks him, sending him flying. Lloyd wakes up from his sleep to find the injured Grim nearby. Grim is crying, feeling sorry for the members of the Assassin's Guild still there. Lloyd is confused and angry upon hearing what Grim says. Ren and the others still didn't know what exactly was happening. Then, as they looked around, they saw some sort of creatures emerging from each person's mouth. Galilea had heard rumors about demons that could live inside humans, become parasites, and control them. Jade confirmed this, saying that everyone there was a group of demons he had brought from the Netherworld. Jade also revealed that he himself was from there. He came to this world because what he desired existed here, specifically Jade's body, which had the ability to teleport. He finally introduced himself. His name was Guisarm. Guisarm explained that Jade was already dead and that he had taken over his body. Teleportation is an extraordinary magic, so Guisarm was willing to spend months eradicating Jade's soul. Guisarm then recounted that Jade was always thinking about his friends. Guisarm felt that a cursed person's body was perfect for him and was a rare vessel. He even planned to take over the bodies of Jade's friends, who were also cursed. At that moment, Jade chose to die, because if his body died, Guisarm, who had taken over his body, would also die. However, on the brink of death, Guisarm revived him. After that, Jade still tried various ways to die. His soul continued to live within the body, and he kept seeking help. Guisarm then approached Ren, grabbed her head, and lifted her. He then told the other demons that they had to be careful with this child because she had killed her own parents. Of course, Ren's friends found this extremely outrageous. They really wanted to eliminate him, but their bodies still couldn't move. Guisarm then saw the tattoo on Ren's right arm and was confused because it wasn't in Jade's life record. Guisarm thought it might be a magic technique, but he wasn't interested in magic. He just didn't want any marks like that on his possession. Guisarm then asked about the tattoo, who did it, and what effect it had. Ren was forced to answer, but she kept her mouth shut. Deep down in her heart, Ren was very sad because there were so many things she wanted to tell Jade. Guisarm kept pressing Ren for the information he wanted, but Ren resisted with all her might. Suddenly, there was a magic spell around them. In an instant, a massive explosion occurred. Someone had fired a powerful spell at their location. Ren and all the members of the Assassin's Guild survived because a barrier spell protected them. From the top of the castle, Lloyd could be seen having just executed that powerful attack. In Episode 9, the remaining demons were utterly shocked by the extraordinary magic attack they had just witnessed. There was a large hole in the castle, and most of the demons there were hit by the attack. Lloyd approached Ren and the other members of the Assassin's Guild. Seeing Ren injured, he used healing magic to heal her. Lloyd, who had merged with Grim in his palm, then told them to escape and leave everything to him. Ren worried about Lloyd, but Galilea embraced Ren and took her away along with the other members of the Assassin's Guild. Galilea realized that he and his friends could do nothing against the very powerful demon and feared they would only be a burden to Lloyd. The demons looked into the hole caused by Lloyd's attack, searching for Guisarm and worrying if he was dead. Guisarm suddenly appeared behind them with his teleportation magic. He immediately commanded the demons to chase after the fleeing members of the Assassin's Guild. They promptly moved to pursue Galilea and his friends. Seeing this, Lloyd did not let it happen and attacked the demons with his magic. Now, Lloyd was directly facing Guisarm. From the right and left of Lloyd, two demons jumped to attack him. On the other side, Guisarm uttered "die" from his mouth, which manifested as a magic attack. Lloyd was shocked because, despite the barrier surrounding him, the magic could easily penetrate it. Although it penetrated, the magic did not damage Lloyd's barrier at all. Lloyd then thought that since Guisarm said "die" earlier, if the magic hit him, Lloyd might die instantly. Lloyd was very curious about the power of the magic. On the other hand, he also worried that if he got hit by the magic, he would truly die. Seeing Lloyd confused, of course, Grin angrily told Lloyd that he must avoid it. Lloyd then dodged the attack, and the attack hit the demon that was about to attack him earlier. Lloyd then used magic to analyze what happened to the body of the demon hit by the attack. Lloyd saw that if hit by the attack, everything would die instantly. The cause of death was a heart attack. Grim saw that Guizarm did not use a magic technique as an intermediary, but his mana directly created an effect. This was the same as Crow, Ren, and Pazuzu, the transmutation of mana. Lloyd also realized that what Guizarm did was the same as Crow's cursed speech. Every creation in this world from magic techniques can be avoided with a barrier of magic power. However, this does not apply to direct magic attacks. If magic power is likened to water, the barrier is like a filter. Although objects with form can be stopped, water can certainly penetrate it. Grim also noticed that Guizarm's magic power was on the same level as Pazuzu's. Lloyd's magic might be able to obliterate it, but perhaps Guizarm's magic power could affect Lloyd's heart. Guizarm then looked towards the bridge, where his subordinates were running after the members of the Assassin's Guild. He grumbled about having useless and stupid subordinates because they could die only due to low-level technique like magic. Grim then explained that demons have several levels, ranging from 1 to 10. The lowest group is the weakest demons, like those chasing the Assassin's Guild, so magic still works on them. Pazuzu is at level 8, and Grim is a level 3 demon. Lloyd then asked if Guizarm was a level 1 demon. Grim replied no, because his level is higher than level 1, specifically a demon lord. To them, demon clans like Grim are nothing more than commoners. Even 100 level 1 demons wouldn't be able to defeat him. Even for Lloyd, Guizarm is a dangerous opponent. Though Grim appeared very frightened, Lloyd slowly approached Guizarm. Guizarm then asked who he was. Lloyd explained that he was just the 7th prince. Guizarm recalled that Jade was very eager to meet the 7th prince. Lloyd also said he wanted to meet Jade, but Guizarm thwarted his wish. Guizarm was also angry at Lloyd for destroying his subordinates and his castle. The two of them prepared to attack each other. Grim was already trembling with fear. Grim then suggested to Lloyd to run away, as his current opponent was not an ordinary demon. Lloyd said that the enemy before him was indeed different from the level 10 demons he had just easily wiped out with his magic. In his heart, Grim admired Lloyd, because even level 10 demons are not so easy to defeat. Even magic techniques should not work on them. It's like splashing water on a fish, it certainly won't die, but with highly pressurized water, it might be killed. However, Guizarm was different, as magic pressure or anything else was just like small waves to him. He was like a great monster living in the ocean where even light couldn't reach. Smiling, Guizarm created a small object like a nail using his magic. He flicked the object, making it fly swiftly towards Lloyd. Grim was extremely shocked and terrified, seeing the object almost penetrating Lloyd's very strong magic barrier. The object pierced through 2 layers of Lloyd's barrier with just that small amount of magic power. Its strength far exceeded Grim's magic power, which couldn't penetrate it at all. Guizarm commented that Lloyd's barrier was rather thick. He then prepared an even more powerful magic attack, forming numerous spears with his magic power and launching them at Lloyd. Lloyd, still inside his barrier, tried to evade the attacks. Several strikes hit Lloyd's magic barrier, shattering it, and he formed a new barrier. Lloyd then moved away, while continuously activating his barrier. Lloyd continued to dodge, focusing solely on the attacks. Suddenly, his movement was halted by Guizarm, who teleported in front of him. With just one kick, Lloyd and his barrier were thrown downward, right into the path of Guizarm's magic attack. Swiftly, Lloyd created a giant monster statue from the ground to block Guizarm's magic attack. Elsewhere, the members of the Assassin's Guild were trapped near an exit. The demons were still pursuing them. Babylon had climbed a fence, hoping he could open the gate from the inside. Back to Lloyd and Guizarm's fight, Guizarm noticed that Lloyd was uninjured and only showed a change in expression when Guizarm used teleportation. Lloyd said that teleportation was not his power, but Guizarm retorted that it was his power, because Jade couldn't control it yet, while he could. He also said that humans wouldn't be able to control it unless it was made into a magic technique. But it was very easy for Guizarm because he had perfect magical power, like a bird that could fly on its own without being taught. According to Guizarm, Cursed people were pitiful anomalies born with wings but didn't know how to fly. Especially Jade, whose wings were so large that the sound of their flapping could echo into the demon world. In his world, cursed people would be ostracized. They should willingly surrender to the demons and then die. Guisarm then prepared even more attacks. He challenged Lloyd, giving him a choice to either accept or dodge his attack, or admit defeat and flee. But with just a snap of his fingers, Guisarm used his teleportation power to stab Lloyd from behind. Lloyd couldn't detect the attack at all. Guisarm was very proud of his attack because its speed was undetectable, and it was invisible when targeting. Guisarm then thrust another spear at Lloyd. The scene then shifted elsewhere, where the members of the Assassin's Guild were cornered, unable to escape because the gate was closed. Galilea used his spider web power to trap the demons chasing them. The slime Galilea produced would harden like stone within seconds. Of course, the demons tried to break free from the slime before it hardened. Crow didn't stay idle. He uttered the curse, "Fall," from his mouth, causing the demons to fall to the ground. The demons were trapped and couldn't move. From inside the building, Babylon managed to pull the lever to open the gate. Crow and Ren immediately moved outside and passed through the gate. Unexpectedly, the demons were very physically strong. They managed to pull their hands and feet free from Galilea's slime trap. Now it was Terria's turn to step up. She looked at all the demons in front of her, then used her curse by slashing her sword at her leg. Instantly, the demons fell and felt pain in their legs. All her friends were amazed at Terria's current ability. While she and the demons were injured and couldn't move, Teria told her friends to escape to the forest and erase their tracks. Of course, the others were worried about how Teria would save herself later. Unexpectedly, the demons also possessed healing magic. They healed the wounds on their legs, causing Teria's leg wounds to heal as well. Swiftly, Teria stabbed her sword into her left leg again, making the demons scream in pain. Ren and Crow, who were already behind the gate, didn't want to leave Teria, but Galilea pushed Ren and closed the gate. Galilea was ready to face the demons alongside Teria. Teria planned to launch a deadly attack. Galilea seemed to understand what Teria was about to do. The demons, overhearing their conversation, also realized that Teria was going to use her sword to cut her own neck. The demons rushed to stop Teria, but Galilea used her slime curse to immobilize them. He positioned himself within Teria's line of sight, ready to accept any consequences. As the demons were immobilized, Teria began to bring her sword closer to her neck. Ren couldn't bear to watch, hysterically screaming Teria and Galilea's names to stop their actions. The scene then shifted to where Guisarm was watching the helpless Lloyd. He wished Lloyd could entertain him a bit longer. As he turned around, a cracking sound was heard. The sound came from Lloyd's body, which turned out to be a mere earth doll as a decoy. Lloyd appeared from behind Guisarm and swung his sword. However, with his teleportation power, Guisarm managed to dodge the attack. He laughed at the realization and invited Lloyd to continue their fun. The scene switched back to Ren and her companions. Suddenly, there was a flash of fire that struck the demons trapped in Galilea's slime. Quickly, Galilea hugged Teria and jumped to avoid the fire attack. They were still unsure of what had happened. They were even more surprised when the gate was suddenly broken from the outside. It turned out to be Albert, Silpha, Diane, Alice, and the soldiers with spellbound swords, ready to fight and rescue Lloyd. In episode 10, Silpha is seen practicing swordsmanship alone. Her target objects are straw mats that have been compressed as much as possible with sorcery. Actually, Silpha can cut through the objects, but if she swings her sword with full force, it will bend. The straw mats that Silpha cut apart appear to be falling apart, and it's extremely heavy. Silpha feels disappointed because this makes it impossible for her to demonstrate her strength in a real fight, since her sword cannot withstand it. Silpha then recalls Pazuzu, whose body is much tougher than the straw mats. Therefore, she cannot defeat him because she cannot fight with her full strength. The scene then shifts to the present, where Ren feels relieved after being rescued by Albert and the others. However, Albert and Silpha look at them angrily. Albert and Silpha then interrogate Ren and the other members of the Assassin's Guild. Silpha points her sword at them and asks where Lloyd is. Silpha threatens that if they lie, she will take them down one by one. Galilea then says that Lloyd is fighting at Lorda's castle. Albert then asks more details, with whom Lloyd is fighting, and the reason for the fight. Teria and Ren then say that Lloyd is fighting to protect them, and he is fighting someone who looks like the last king. Hearing this, Babylon then covers Ren's mouth. He reminds them of their promise to Lloyd when they ate together in the forest, which was not to tell anyone from the kingdom about Lloyd's true power and Grimm. It would be very troublesome if people in the palace knew, and would disturb Lloyd, who wants to learn about magic. And now, it would be dangerous if people from the kingdom saw Lloyd's fight. They would discover Lloyd's power and only become nuisances. Finally, they unanimously agreed to say that Lloyd is currently fighting someone weak. Silpha knows they are lying and prepares to swing her sword. Albert also looks very angry, showing Lloyd's underwear and asking them why Lloyd has to fight for a group of people who display such items as a spectacle. Galilea then explains that the underwear was dirty because of his slime, so he washed and dried it. Misunderstanding this explanation, Albert and Silpha become even angrier upon hearing it. Then, bravely, Ren tried to explain everything, stating that she and her friends were also worried about Lloyd because he had helped them. They were willing to do anything and were ready to be punished. However, the demons had taken Jade, whom they considered family. That's why Lloyd was fighting to defend them. Ren wanted Silpha and Albert to trust her. The atmosphere was briefly silent, and suddenly, a demon ran towards them intending to attack. Fortunately, Alice and her monster, Riru, managed to stop the demon. Alice then said they could trust what Ren said because Riru would definitely bite if he sensed even the slightest malicious intent. Albert and Silpha agreed to trust Riru's instincts for now and decided to focus on fighting the demons before them. Albert then instructed Silpha to find Lloyd and help him. Fearing they might be discovered, Ren tried to block Silpha. At the same time, an attack suddenly destroyed the bridge that Silpha was about to cross to reach the castle. Half of the bridge was destroyed, making it impossible to cross, which made Silpha very upset. She was eager to meet Lloyd and assist him. It turned out that the attack was launched by Guizarm, who did not want anyone interfering with his fight against Lloyd. At the gate, Albert ordered his troops to attack the demons using their spellbound swords, causing the demons to howl in pain from the magical flames emitted by Albert's troops. Albert noticed that the magical attacks were not very effective against the demons, but they were not entirely useless. Dian also stepped forward and attacked with his sword, which emitted flames much larger than those of the kingdom's troops. The demons howled even louder, but they still seemed capable of moving. The attacking troops were visibly exhausted because the spellbound swords used their magical power. The blazing flames also hindered their top close-range fighters, Riru and Silpha, from fighting effectively. Silpha was still at the edge of the bridge, riding Shiro and commanding him to jump across the destroyed bridge. However, it seemed impossible because the distance was too great. Realizing this, Silpha got down from Shiro, planning to cross using a rope. Shiro reminisced about Lloyd petting him, and he was very eager to meet him. Shiro then jumped alone, but as expected, he fell into the river because the jump was not far enough. As Silpha looked to the other side of the bridge, suddenly a demon jumped up to attack Silpha from below the bridge. Fortunately, she was able to dodge the attack. The demon attacked with a sword and very quick movements. All of his attacks were parried by Silpha with her sword. Members of the Assassin's Guild who saw it were very impressed by the swift movements. The demon then said that the other demons were level 10, while he was a level 8 demon. He was a practitioner of the demon blade form, the strongest teaching from the Netherworld. Hearing this, Silpha realized for the first time that there were levels in the demon world. Silpha then mocked the hat on the demon's head, thinking it was dung. Naturally, this made the demon very angry. Back at the gate, Albert, who had been observing the battle between the demons and his troops, concluded that the bodies of the people in the kingdom of Lordost had been taken over by demons. He was contemplating ways to save them when suddenly a demon leaped, attempting to attack him from behind. Fortunately, Babylon swiftly jumped in and broke the demon's neck, causing it to fall to the ground. The demon struggled, trying its hardest to move its human body, but its efforts were in vain. Babylon then told Albert that there was nothing more they could do for the people possessed by the demons. The only thing left in them was demons in human skin, and the human souls had long since died. Albert then watched as the struggling demon finally died along with its human body. Albert thanked Babylon for the advice. He then walked forward, approaching the demons that were burning. Albert began chanting his spell, and the sky above the demons was covered with Albert's magical power. Albert released his magic, causing fire to fall from the sky like meteors, directly hitting the demons. The scene shifts to the battle between Silpha and the level 8 demon. They are seen clashing swords with each other, launching attack after attack. The demon uses the demon blade form sword technique, while Silpha uses the langless sword technique. The members of the Assassin's Guild can only watch their fight in awe. The battle appears evenly matched. Silpha gets a cut on her temple, and the demon also gets a slash on his temple. However, the demon has regeneration abilities, healing quickly, unlike Silpha, who lacks this power. Seeing Silpha's incredible abilities, the demon is interested in taking Silpha's body as his next vessel. This way, his sword technique would reach an even higher level, and he would also possess Silpha's langless sword technique. Silpha is confused by what he means. The demon then demonstrates the sword technique of Lordost and attacks Silpha with a fighting style completely different from before. The demon explains that the sword technique he just used is from the human body he is possessed. He then shows his hand, which is covered in scars from training. The demon can even access the memories of the humans he possesses. To him, humans are just like clothes that demons wear, and now he wants to use Silpha's body. Silpha then jumps and uses her sword to perform the demon blade form technique against the demon. The demon barely blocks it, shocked that Silpha can also use the demon blade form. Silpha explains that she learned and mimicked it by watching him. She then mocks the demon for not being able to replicate techniques without stealing a body. This makes the demon very angry. Silpha then calls for Shiro and takes a sword from within Shiro's fur. She says that a creature with a borrowed body like the demon can never defeat a human who has been continually forged by life's lessons. Then, in a flashback, Lloyd is seen running towards Silpha, carrying an object. The object Lloyd brings is a sword that he and Diane made especially for Silpha. Lloyd says that the sword doesn't have any fantastic magical powers, but is crafted with an emphasis on strength and flexibility. According to Lloyd, the sword will be highly compatible with Silpha, even if she uses all her full strength. With this sword, Silpha can surely kill demons easily. Lloyd then explains that a demon's true form lies in its spirit, so if they don't have a body, they can't do much. That's why they either form their own bodies or possess human bodies. Even though demons take over human bodies, the essence remains within the human body. So if the human body dies, the demon inside will also die. However, a human body controlled by a demon becomes extremely strong. Weak attacks won't be effective. If they do hit, the demon will quickly heal. The way to defeat them is with a single lethal strike. Silpha approached Lloyd and asked why he imbued the sword with the magic of strength and flexibility. Lloyd then answered that he noticed Silpha always seemed to be holding back when swinging her sword, so he thought maybe Silpha couldn't unleash her full strength because she was worried about her sword. Silpha hugged Lloyd, deeply moved by his response, realizing how much he had been paying attention to her. Silpha promised to take care of the sword for the rest of her life. Back in the present, Silpha appeared ready with her sword. The demon tried to provoke her, saying that humans didn't need to struggle because their future had already been decided, a world doomed by the cunning of demons. Initially, the demons planned to lure Jade out after stealing all the bodies in the kingdom of Lordost. The news of the war had been convincingly spread worldwide. Naturally, Jade immediately returned to Lordost. Ren and the others were furious upon hearing the demon's confession. The demons fabricated stories about the war that Jade despised. It turned out that all of this was the work of the demons. Silpha then advanced towards the demon with her sword in hand. She prepared to launch her attack, saying that the future the demon described would never happen. Not to be outdone, the demon also readied a secret technique, demon blade form. They both launched their attacks simultaneously. The demon's body was cleaved in half and fell before the members of the Assassin's Guild. Episode 11 begins with a flashback where Jade, who appears very thin and weak, is talking to Gizarm. Jade, seemingly resigned to his fate, tells Gizarm that he won't let Gizarm do as he pleases and that Gizarm will be the one to lose. Gizarm then asks, lose to whom? But Jade simply hangs his head and remains silent. Gizarm thinks Jade has died and immediately enters Jade's body. Gizarm is still curious about what exactly Jade did right before he died. Gizarm can use Jade's abilities and sees Jade's memories, viewing Jade's friends, but cannot see beyond that because their presence obscures his vision. Eventually, Gizarm decides not to dwell on it. As for him, the important thing is that Jade's body is now his. Returning to the present, Silpha, who has just defeated the level 8 demon, walks toward the original body that the demon had possessed and bows her head. Silpha believes that before the man's body was taken over by the demon, he was a renowned swordsman. Silpha also wishes she could have fought the swordsman in his original form. She then sees Ren Kroning and the other members of the Assassin's Guild, who are also mourning. Through her tears, Ren says that the swordsman must now be feeling happy. Seeing this, Silpha thinks that being assassins might not be the right job for them. Suddenly, there is a massive explosion in the river nearby. The water in the river seems to evaporate, and the temperature around them suddenly becomes hot. From afar, Lloyd is flying in the air, muttering that he regrets what he did earlier because the steam makes it hard for him to see his surroundings. Previously, Lloyd had been flying quickly, avoiding the barrage of magical spear attacks from Gizarm. As he dodged, Lloyd continued thinking about more efficient ways to deflect Gizarm's attacks. Gizarm's magical spears could penetrate 1 or 2 layers of Lloyd's barrier, and if they hit, the results would be fatal. Lloyd felt safe enough with the attacks because he still had barriers to protect him. Another attack from Gizarm was Cursed Speech, which could easily penetrate the barrier since it had no physical form. Lloyd could die instantly if it touched him. Fortunately, the Cursed Speech moved very slowly, so Lloyd had to shield himself and evade simultaneously. The most troublesome attack was the Shadow Wolf, which combined the magical spear technique with teleportation magic, making it hit the target unpredictably. Because of this, Lloyd was forced to keep moving at high speed to avoid all these attacks. Even a 2-second lapse in concentration would allow Gizarm to pinpoint his location and strike immediately. Currently, Gizarm's strategy was to keep attacking Lloyd from a distance to wear down his stamina and concentration. This made Lloyd angry, so he decided to counterattack with a high-speed technique and shoot within 2 seconds, faster than the Shadow Wolf. Lloyd used a dual incantation, creating a gigantic fire magic golem that moved towards Gizarm. However, Gizarm easily dodged it with his teleportation power. Lloyd's attack didn't stop and struck the river, causing the water to evaporate and creating a mist that obscured vision. Lloyd then used Kijutsu to detect Gizarm's presence, and Grim reminded Lloyd to keep moving to avoid Gizarm's attacks. Lloyd moved quickly while thinking about what he should do. Lloyd then realized that earlier, he hadn't moved for several seconds, yet Gizarm didn't attack him with the Shadow Wolf. Lloyd also wondered how Gizarm could determine his location. He recalled the letter Gizarm sent to the Assassin's Guild headquarters, possibly indicating Gizarm knew its location. Lloyd also remembered Gizarm's words when ordering his subordinates to chase the Assassin's Guild members. Gizarm had said that the guild members were very skilled at hiding, and if they disappeared, even he wouldn't be able to track them. Lloyd now realized that Gizarm's ability to identify locations was actually just through his own sight. So, the river mist became very useful. Lloyd stopped moving, and indeed, no attacks came his way. Lloyd actually wanted to use his sword up close, but that would be noticeable and could be fatal. Lloyd then thought about what he should do next. On the other hand, Gizarm was just walking on the ground, not expecting Lloyd to evaporate the river and render him unable to see anything. However, he decided not to do anything now and would just wait for Lloyd. Sure enough, Lloyd came straight at him, but it turned out that Lloyd used the Parade of Dolls technique, creating numerous clay clones of himself. They all attacked Gizarm simultaneously. Gizarm couldn't detect which one was the real Lloyd. He just stood there and took the attacks. Some swords managed to stab Gizarm's body, allowing him to distinguish between real swords and those made of clay. Quickly, Gizarm fired his spears using the Shadow Wolf technique, and several magic spears struck Lloyd's body. Gizarm easily regenerated his body. proudly, he said that magical attacks were ineffective against him, as were the physical attacks Lloyd attempted with his sword. Gizarm also mentioned that even if his brain and heart were destroyed, his body would regenerate immediately. This was how Gizarm stayed alive when Jade decided to end his own life. However, unexpectedly, the body of Lloyd that had been hit by Gizarm's magic spears was also just a clone. Gizarm was truly surprised that Lloyd had given his real sword to a clone and let it attack. The real Lloyd finally retrieved the sword. Meanwhile, Gizarm, surrounded by Lloyd's clones, still couldn't identify the real one. Gizarm tried to analyze and assumed that the real Lloyd must be above him. But when Gizarm looked up, he was suddenly attacked by a huge fire spell cast by the real Lloyd, who was right in front of him. However, the attack meant nothing to Gizarm, who quickly regenerated. Gizarm's burnt clothes were quickly replaced with new ones using his teleportation power. Internally, Gizarm muttered that he could teleport without seeing, as long as he knew the location, but he couldn't attack a place he didn't know. Gizarmi then prepared a large number of magic spears, planning to attack all of Lloyd's clones indiscriminately. In his view, this was the simplest method. A barrage of attacks was launched, and Gizarm saw one of his spears hit a barrier. He immediately teleported and eliminated the Lloyd inside that barrier, but it turned out that this too was just a clone. Gizarm thought Lloyd was deliberately doing this to deceive him. He continued attacking all the Lloyds there without stopping. One by one, Lloyd's clones were eliminated. It turned out that the real Lloyd was among the clones, using magic to make himself invisible and not using any barrier at all. Grim was very worried because Lloyd could be hit by the spears at any moment. Carefully, Lloyd tried to approach Gizarm with his sword. The sword Lloyd was holding now was a special sword he created, called the Spelltaker Sword. As the name suggests, this sword has the ability to absorb magic. After successfully absorbing magic, Lloyd could use the absorbed magical power to enhance his own or analyze the absorbed magic. Lloyd was very pleased with this sword, as it would greatly help him learn new magic he did not yet know. Then, at a very close distance, Lloyd managed to touch the teleportation magic with his sword without Gizarm noticing. Grim now understood Lloyd's goal was to analyze the teleportation power, something even Jade couldn't achieve in his lifetime. Grim thought it was impossible. However, Grim believed nothing could stop Lloyd from learning unknown magical techniques. Lloyd finally tried to analyze the teleportation magic. Lloyd's consciousness seemed to enter another dimension searching for Jade. After a while, a very bright light appeared before Lloyd. He saw several magical holes like black holes in the vast expanse of light. Lloyd observed them for a moment and then nodded, understanding something. In the real world, all of Lloyd's clones turned back into clay. Lloyd then deactivated his transparency spell, making Gizarm able to see him now. Gizarm realized that Lloyd had been hiding using transparency magic. He saw Lloyd wasn't using any barriers and had blood running down his cheek. Gizarm was confused about what Lloyd was doing. Lloyd then said that he understood now. Gizarm felt arrogant, thinking Lloyd understood that he couldn't defeat him. Gizarm then tried to persuade Lloyd to join him. Lloyd just sighed and said he didn't understand what Gizarm was talking about. Lloyd then used a metaphor. A lion never questions why it has fangs and claws. It's because they never feel uncomfortable with them. This makes their lives monotonous and boring. Lloyd said that all of Gizarm's techniques are like that. Gizarm was indeed born with extraordinary power, but that's all he has. Meanwhile, humans are weak creatures. They live by struggling with all their shortcomings. That's why they can create something extraordinary. For example, magic. They want to fly in the sky, they want to shoot fire, and so on. Through each magic technique created, it all started from their desires. That's why they become limitless. Gizarm ignored Lloyd's words and decided to attack him directly. He used teleportation magic to attack Lloyd, but unexpectedly, just as Gizarm shifted places, Lloyd moved very quickly and punched him right in the stomach. Lloyd used Kinjutsu at his punch, making Gizarm groan in pain. He had no knowledge of this Kinjutsu technique. What puzzled him even more was how Lloyd could predict the direction of his teleportation before he did it. Lloyd sat down while watching Gizarm writhe in pain. Lloyd said he was waiting to see what other techniques Gizarm would show him. According to Lloyd, Gizarm's magic spear and cursed speech were just higher-level techniques belonging to Grim and Crow. Lloyd then challenged Gizarm to attack him. Gizarm was very angry, thinking that Lloyd's previous attack hitting him was just luck. Lloyd then asked what Jade had said in his final moments. Gizarm was startled but refused to answer, thinking it was unimportant. Lloyd then repeated Jade's last words, "You will lose." Gizarm seemed traumatized by those words and became very angry, using his teleportation magic again. But once again, Lloyd knew where Gizarm would appear, and he kicked and pummeled him repeatedly. Several times Gizarm used teleportation magic, and each time Lloyd hit him right where he appeared. Gizarm thought that Lloyd's attacks were not a problem for him. Even though the pain was immense, he could still recover. What confused Gizarm was just one thing: how Lloyd could read where he would teleport. Lloyd continued to pummel Gizarm with various magical and physical attacks. He then recalled his past life, where he had always been engrossed in studying magic books. He was always curious about the kind of person who first discovered such magic techniques. Was it a good person? A frightening person? A fun person? Because now all he could do was study it. The chance to converse with someone like that might come once in a lifetime if he were lucky. In his imagination, a mysterious person who looked similar to Jade handed Lloyd a black cloth. That made him very happy. Perhaps he was the only one with such dreams. Gizarm looked extremely angry. Then he showed that the Demon King could control the magical energy in the entire sky. He compressed that magical energy into one place, creating a very large magic sphere. He said that this technique would send anything it touched to another dimension. The magic sphere could send everything into a void. Gizarm named this technique the Mortal Dark Sphere. Lloyd and Grimm could only watch in silence. In episode 12, Gizarm throws the Mortal Dark Sphere he has prepared towards Lloyd. Lloyd remains calm. From a distance, the Mortal Dark Sphere that Gizarm threw suddenly goes poof and disappears. Gizarm is very shocked and confused about where the powerful magic he just created and threw at Lloyd went. Lloyd then explains that he had erased the Mortal Dark Sphere by colliding it with the same technique. Gizarm becomes furious, not believing that Lloyd could use the same technique as him. Lloyd then demonstrates his magic, the spatial class spell, Void. When facing a barrier or whatever the enemy does, this magic can send it to another dimension. Lloyd had suspected that the technique was just under a different name. Lloyd then recounts how he discovered this magic technique long ago. While experimenting with it on various things during his playtime, Lloyd suddenly thought, what if he collided two voids together? So Lloyd prepared the void magic and tried it. Gizarm, panting heavily, couldn't believe it, wondering to himself if Lloyd didn't realize how much magical power was needed to create a mortal dark sphere. At that time, Lloyd was very excited, wondering what magical reaction he would get. And the result was as they had just witnessed. Intersecting voids would neutralize each other, resulting in mutual collapse. Lloyd's feelings at that time were likely the same as the disappointment Gizarm felt now. Gizarm still couldn't accept the reality that a human could use a technique only a demon lord could use. Gizarm kept mocking Lloyd, planning to possess Lloyd and taste his seemingly weak magical power. Lloyd suddenly sneezes, which makes Gizarm very angry. He then uses teleportation magic to instantly move behind Lloyd and grab his head to sense his magical power. But Gizarm can only stand there, astonished at Lloyd's incredible magical power. Lloyd then says that he is no longer interested in Gizarm. Lloyd asks if Gizarm would die if attacked with void magic. Lloyd then creates many void spells that now scatter through the air and simultaneously head towards Gizarm. Gizarm panics and immediately activates his teleportation magic. However, he still cannot avoid the attack, and one of the voids hits his body directly. The scene then shifts to Albert and Dian, where they both stand on guard, holding their swords. Due to the thick fog, they can hardly see anything. They consider this a great opportunity as it's the perfect time for Riru, Shiro, and Silpha to attack since this battlefield is ideal for those with a sharp sense of smell. Silpha analyzes the demon's movements, which appear to be dull. Besides, Silpha has been smelling a sweet scent for a while. It turns out to be Ren's poison. She is trying to ensure the poison only affects the enemies, although she still can't perfectly control her power. Albert still doesn't fully understand what is happening. He thinks that maybe if the sun comes up, they will be able to see the situation better. Albert then looks at his watch and is shocked because the sun should have already risen by that time. They think maybe the fog is too thick, but after looking at the sky, they see that it looks dark, like it's still nighttime. The dark sky is actually due to Lloyd's actions, who use void magic to defeat Gizarm. Gizarm is seen struggling, trying to free himself from Lloyd's void magic. Gizarm cannot use any of his magic, be it regeneration or teleportation magic, because he is being absorbed into the void along with the magic he was about to use. Gizarm panics, and the only way out is to leave Jade's body. As he tries to exit, Jade's body suddenly bites Gizarm's tail, preventing him from escaping. Gizarm then uses a cunning trick, pretending to be Jade and begging for mercy. Lloyd knows it's just a trick and continues his attack, making Gizarm's body disappear into the void. The black clouds that shrouded the sky then vanish, and as the sky clears, Lloyd seems to see the shadow of Jade smiling before fading away. The members of the Assassin's Guild see the black layer slowly dissipating. Ren then recalls the past, where Jade talked about the Seventh Prince, who was rumored to be an urban legend. Jade had heard that the fireworks explosion incident reported by the Kingdom of Saloum on the Seventh Prince's birthday was actually the magical power released by the Seventh Prince right after his birth. Galilea and the other members of the Assassin's Guild did not believe the gossip. But according to Jade, if the rumor was true, then the Seventh Prince might be able to lift their curse and lead them to a brighter world. And maybe he could be the intermediary for them to live freely. Ren cries remembering that. The battle ends, and they all start making graves for those who have died. Lloyd and Grimm also make a grave for Jade. Even though there is no body, it is just symbolic. After finishing, Grimm asks Lloyd, puzzled about how the relatively slow void magic could hit Gizarm's body. Lloyd answers that it was because he had analyzed the teleportation magic down to its core. Lloyd created a magical technique to detect when teleportation would appear. Then he linked it with the void technique. This way, he could avoid or track it. Grimm is amazed by Lloyd, as he managed to analyze teleportation magic, which even for Gizarmi was a very difficult technique to understand. Lloyd admits that Gizarmi was a very strong person. Lloyd is aware that analyzing magic techniques while fighting is a very reckless thing to do. But without using that strategy, Lloyd would never be able to attack him. If in the previous fight he hadn't understood the teleportation technique, he might not have felt satisfied. Lloyd explained that when he analyzed the teleportation spell, he saw its magical structure clearly. It was highly structured and easy to understand, truly beautiful. This was because, in his final moments, Jade managed to complete the formulation of the teleportation technique before he left it behind. Jade knew that one day someone would strive to find a way to defeat his teleportation magic. According to Lloyd, the winner was not himself but Jade. From behind a tree, Ren was moved by Lloyd's words, but as she was about to thank Lloyd, Albert approached him with a serious look on his face. Albert then asked about Jade's grave that Lloyd had made. Albert already knew the story about Jade, including how the members of the Assassin's Guild had sought Lloyd's help. He had also heard about the lives of the Assassin's Guild members and their dreams, what Lloyd had done for them, and how Lloyd defeated the Demon Lord alone. Albert was very impressed and proud of Lloyd. However, now Albert was detaining the members of the Assassin's Guild because they were people from the Dark World who worked by killing others. Moreover, they had kidnapped members of the royal family and even involved Lloyd as the seventh prince in the war. This was a fatal mistake. The members of the Assassin's Guild declared that they would serve Lloyd for the rest of their lives to atone for their mistakes. If this was not accepted, they were willing to undergo any punishment. Albert then pointed his sword at Lloyd, asking what his decision would be. This was different from keeping a dog or a cat. If the members of the Assassin's Guild, who had a bad reputation, made a mistake, it would all be Lloyd's responsibility, and it would tarnish the name of the Kingdom of Saloum. Lloyd agreed with all of Albert's statements and admitted that he was the one who started everything, not the members of the Assassin's Guild. Lloyd also said he was ready to take full responsibility if they ever made a mistake. Albert sheathed his sword and advised Lloyd that being the seventh prince did not mean he could do whatever he wanted, and not to think that people wouldn't care about him just because he was the seventh prince. Albert also told Lloyd not to be too rigid. If Lloyd ever had problems, he should try asking for help from others. To Albert, Lloyd was his very precious brother. Everyone was moved by this moment. Suddenly, Someone came running towards them from afar. It was Tao, who had heard that Lloyd was in a fierce battle, so she rushed over in a hurry. Tao said that she was ready to help, but when Tao saw the expressions on the faces of the people there, she realized that the battle was already over. Tao felt embarrassed and ran away from the place. Albert asked the others to chase after Tao because he wanted to thank her for helping him in the previous battle. Then, in a warm atmosphere, they had a tea party together as a token of gratitude for Tao's help. Of course, Tao felt happy and also nervous because her wish to have tea with Albert had now come true. To ease the tension, Albert told them that it was a casual gathering, so they could enjoy themselves. They gladly enjoyed the tea party. While they were having fun, Silpha, Elise, and Ren were enjoying a new hot spring created by the earlier battle. While they were bathing together, Ren told Silpha that she wanted to serve near Lloyd like Silpha had been doing all this time. She pleaded earnestly because she wanted to repay Lloyd by protecting him closely. Silpha replied that she couldn't decide that alone and that it was something Ren should ask Lloyd directly. Unexpectedly, Lloyd was also there and immediately answered, "Sure." Ren was startled and moved away from Lloyd. It turned out Lloyd was there because Silpha had dragged him since his body was covered in mud, sweat, and slime. Lloyd noticed that Ren still considered herself blighted. However, this was her inherent ability since birth. In Ren's case, if she could better understand the types of poison she produced and break down its components, she could become a pharmacist who could save many lives. Ren was astonished, realizing for the first time that she could actually save many lives. Lloyd added that poison and medicine are like two sides of the same coin. Ren just needed to understand her power and uncover it little by little. It was a job that required magical technique. Such advancements would be needed in the future, and Lloyd wanted to make it happen. Hearing this, Ren was very moved. She remembered her past when she was ostracized and driven away because of her poison. No one acknowledged her power, not even herself. But now, Lloyd recognized her without any discrimination. Lloyd never even called them blighted. Silpha, who heard Lloyd's words, was also touched. Ren promised to keep fighting with all her might. At the end of the episode, Ren was seen dressing up in a maid's outfit. She then watched Silpha and learned what a maid should do. Lloyd and Albert were seen facing the king. Lloyd looked very panicked and was sweating profusely, but thankfully, as usual, Albert tried to protect Lloyd and impressed the king. Lloyd felt relieved. Later, Grim was seen cleaning the secret library inside the palace. There, Lloyd was relaxing and reading a magic book. The episode ended here.